Hey, I'm Alex, and welcome to Hallucination. If you love true horror stories, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. The stories you'll hear are shared by our audience from Reddit, and to keep their original essence, I read them exactly as they were written. Before we begin, let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? Also, check the timestamps in the comments for story titles and easy navigation. Now, let's dive into the darkness. Hi. So this is awkward. I'm not Fiona Novak. I've never really done anything like this before. Of course I know Reddit, obviously, but writing like this isn't my kind of thing. I'm still gonna try. No worries, Forest Bride is gonna be back soon, but for now you're stuck with me. Just to introduce myself, my name is Jasik Hetman. I used to live in the old black mill in the Novak's woods. Then my dad died. I met and fell helplessly in love with the young daughter of his former childhood friend. And yeah, you know what happened. I've seen the other posts. I had some time to read through all of them earlier, and damn has it messed me up. There was a lot of stuff in there that I just really hadn't known before. I could have lived in peace not knowing about the sauna orgy, but fuck, that's on me. I should just stayed that day. But you know how it is when you're in denial. Rejecting her was a defense mechanism. But I regretted it even then. I'm glad she knows how I feel. We haven't talked about it yet, but whatever. I'm all tingly. And I'm glad to be back even though things were looking pretty bleak there for a while. Nick has given me permission to return. I know he wants me to talk Fiona into spilling the tea and giving him permission to start his little excavation soon. I intend to do no such thing, nor will I share the information I now have with him. I don't rightly know how I feel about being handed around like bribery. Guess that's just what I signed on for though. She's asleep right now, as is Casimir. And their father too, only difference being he's tied up on the floor. I stopped it with the fire once I got him to surrender. Then I went over to him and knocked him out. Getting him and Fiona back to the house wasn't exactly easy, but Licorice was a big help. I basically loaded Fiona onto his back and had him carry her. Yeah, I've got the dog with me. It's not his fault for doing what an animal like him does, and I guess now we're even for me leaving him hanging all those years. I went about dragging Daddy Dearest back myself, and damn was that a chore. Nothing I couldn't handle though. Not to brag, but I'm a pretty strong guy, although my smoking has done a number on my lungs. I sort of felt that by the time I'd reached the house, might have to dial down on the cigarettes a bit. I'm just glad Fiona wasn't awake to hear me wheezing my heart out. Okay, that came out wrong, but you know what I mean? Once we were there, I carried both of them inside. The door was still open. I wasn't surprised to find Casimir passed out in the living room. What a shit show. I don't really know how to deal with injured people, so I just laid both the siblings down on the sofa and went about tying up the dad, that I'm good at. Ciez was the first to wake up. Boy, was he glad to see me. He checked Fiona for wounds and said that she seemed to be overall okay. She joined us in the land of the living not long after, and it was obvious she was in a fuck ton of pain. Kinda broke my heart there a little bit. She insisted she'd be fine, and that all she needed was rest. I wanted to get both of them to see a doctor as soon as possible, but those two are stubborn as shit. Casimir literally agrees with everything his big sister tells him, and the woman herself, well, I can't really fault her for being hard-headed and wanting to pull through. Not when that's literally one of the most attractive things about her. I'm worried though, about CAs in particular. On my last visit here, just before I was about to leave, he'd pulled me to the side to talk in private. He'd been hoping to convince me to stay, and he'd shared something pretty troubling about his health. I won't say what here because it's really not my place, but you catch my drift. Either way, both of them appear to be doing fine, given the circumstances. CS has been researching a bunch of things, and Fiona's taken the time to write out the previous post and is now sleeping. They've promised they'll seek medical treatment as soon as this whole thing is over, which we're all guessing is gonna be any day now. It really feels like everything's coming to a head. I've got a rough couple days behind me myself, but I'll save that story for another time. This is actually about something else. Fiona has asked me to write out what happened with her younger brother Jeremy. She says she's not ready to hear it yet, but that she would like to have the choice to do so later. She also figured this would be interesting to the lot of you who've been reading her updates. So here I am. The whole ordeal took place around 3 years ago. I had long since settled into my new, more modern life. I have a place on the surface, but mainly, I hang around at my other apartment in the Pride Hellsphere. Nick likes to always have me nearby in case anything comes up he might need me for. Hell is a nice enough place when you're not there to be punished. Besides, I've made a couple friends down there, and while those admittedly aren't the most stable or intimate connections, I'm always in good company if I want to party. My exact job is a little harder to describe. I'm basically the on-call guy doing whatever Nick needs me for at all times. That obviously means I've seen some shit, but Jeremy Novak, that guy actually gave me nightmares. Nightmares. Yeah. So Nick called me into his office that day and had me sit down with him, which I've come to learn means that whatever he's about to tell me is going to be wild. He further confirmed this suspicion by literally telling me to buckle up as he lit himself a cigar and handed me a beer. "You surely remember Fiona Novak," he began, eyeing me attentively. "Vividly," I replied. I hadn't heard that name in a while. I didn't like the tightness in my chest it caused. I had been trying to forget it for a very long time, to no avail, which just made me feel really pathetic. It had become sort of a she who must not be named sort of thing. Remembering Fiona meant mostly regrets, and every time I'd allowed myself to think of her, I'd end up locking myself into my bedroom and eating Nutella out of the jar. "So, you used to be around her a lot. Any chance you ever met her brother?" "Which one?" "The second-born, Jeremy." "I don't know," I told him. "Probably not." "Well then, you will, and rather soon if I can help it." My master shot me a meaningful glance. "He's gone and turned a bunch of parents into mourners." "You been killing people?" I asked, admittedly dumbfounded. "Many. Girls. Many of them. 42 to be exact. I've been waiting on the cops to get him for over a year now. The bastard's kinda clever. Either that or he's been lucking out, cause I sure as fucking helping him. You know how I can be. I do appreciate a bit of violence here and there, but when someone goes and offs more humans than I can count with my fingers, that's just the kind of over-the-top impertinence I don't approve of anymore. At first I figured he'd be entertaining, but he's gone too far. It's time for him and I to meet, if you catch my drift." Nick's smile was wide and open, his tongue briefly slithering across his front teeth. He shot me a wink. "Consider it done," I replied casually. "That easy? Even though you guys go back?" "We don't go back. I saw him once or twice maybe years ago." I shrugged. "It's all in the past." "Good, because you're not going to like what you'll see out there." He handed me a slip of paper with 2 addresses on it. "It's a waste disposal site, unprotected, no surveillance. Get there, find the latest victim. He's left her there somewhere. Then go to his place and collect him for me. I want his soul, his consciousness, his essence. You know what that means. You want him to die in some particular way, or?" Nick smiled thinly. "Just take a look at the scene and follow whatever mood that puts you into, McKay." He leaned forward on his elbows. "Just one thing though. Jeremy Novak is going to spend the rest of his eternity in our prison. Make sure his first impression of us will be memorable." Just an hour or so later, I was standing in front of a gigantic stinking heap of trash. It was late at night, no sounds except some bird cawing way off in the distance. Jem had come a far way from his new home to dump this corpse. Smart move, but for the girl, what a horrible fucking place to end up. I began picking my way through the waste, breathing through my mouth. This would have been the famous search for the needle in the haystack, except I've got honed instincts. You spend a considerable portion of your life around dead things, you kind of get a feel for them. I found her buried beneath piles of junk, wrapped up in plastic. I dragged her to the side where I knelt down and took out my pocket knife. Cutting her free took longer than expected. Novak had rolled her into like 5 or 6 layers, and he'd even stuffed papers and styrofoam in there to obscure the shape of the person underneath. When I finally removed the last bit of crinkling tissue from the girl's upper body and laid eyes on her face, my stomach dropped. Matted dark hair spilled out from the plastic, pale skin baring itself to the night air, glazed gray eyes staring up into the starry sky. No. I fell back onto my hands, scrambling away from the corpse like a spider startled out of its web. The air around me suddenly seemed to think. I felt like I couldn't get enough of it into my body to sustain me. I was hyperventilating. I couldn't get a proper hold of any of the thoughts that were suddenly racing through my head. It was all a big panicked frenzy. Don't be her. Why her? Out of all 42, why does she have to be the one I had to find? Kinda selfish, that last one. I know, but I was out of it. My mind was screaming, and a cold phantom pain stung the frayed edges of the hole in my chest, like the heart that wasn't there was about to break all over again. I willed my tear-blurred eyes to focus on her face again. I willed myself to look. My shoulders sagged in relief. It wasn't her. It wasn't her. The hair was dark, yes, but not quite dark enough. The gray of the irises was a tad darker, and the features, though on first glance rather similar, in fact, wholly different. On top of that, she looked to be in her early 20s, so younger than Fiona had to have been at the time. The superficial resemblance, however, remained striking. This could not have been a coincidence. This girl had died because of her looks. A grim picture started piecing itself together in the back of my mind. I stared at the body with knitted brows. How had he killed her? There were no obvious injuries drawing my attention. No stab wounds. No marks around the neck to indicate strangulation. I moved her head, then pulled on her arm a little. Rigor mortis had already lifted. The corpse had to be over a day old. I was beginning to suspect something. Now, here's something I've been called a pussy for by a bunch of my colleagues. I still get severely grossed out by a lot of shit. Depending on who they're from, I also hate seeing exposed guts and blood. Not a problem when I'm the one to draw it, of course. Okay, so I'm basically working on bringing about the fall of humanity in all holy creation, and I stand behind that concept, but innocent folks suffering too much still sort of gets me. I mean, some things just cross the line, you know? I started to pull back the wrapping covering her lower body, and the line got so fucking crossed. There was a knife sticking out between her legs. It had been rammed into her several times, leaving her privates completely mutilated. I don't care to describe it in any further detail. I staggered back, turning around as if to spare the dead girl the offending sight as I proceeded to empty my stomach. The piercing stench helped as the display I had just witnessed managed to draw even the last scraps of undigested content from my body. When I was finally done puking, I had to sit down for a while. My face buried in my sweat-laced palms, I tried to collect my thoughts. There were only so many conclusions to be drawn from a killing like this. It had been a brutal, savage act of hatred. The fact that 41 other women had suffered the same fate made the situation even more horrific. I left the disposal site in flames, burnt it all to a crisp. With my schedule packed and Nick wanting results, I didn't have the time nor energy to take the girl somewhere proper, but I couldn't leave her lying there either. She looked so lost in all that trash, so lonely and cold and exposed. In hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have taken it upon myself to cremate her. Perhaps Shed had parents or a guy or something who'd have wanted to know what happened to her. Then again, her simply never being found was probably an easier to stomach story than the truth. Just a forever missing person. I wondered where her essence had ended up. It's easy. If you've got unfinished business, you get reborn. If you're nice, you go to heaven, and if you're bad but not bad or interesting enough for Nick to waste space on you in hell, he eats your consciousness. Just swallows you whole, and that's it. You'll be gone forever. Then of course there's the lost souls who never even make it off the earth, but those are a whole other story. Anyways, I made it to Jem's place. It was this ground floor apartment, so I picked open one of the windows. I'm rather good at that kind of thing. My job has its perks. It's like a blessing from the other side. Whatever crap I get up to usually works out fine for me, so long as it's against some sort of law, human or otherwise. I got in quietly enough. Jeremy didn't seem to be home. I kinda wished he had been. Could've just grabbed him and gotten it over with right then and there. This way I'd need to kill some time, and I'm unfortunately a hopeless snoop. I knew I'd go through his junk, but I wish I hadn't. I started with his nightstand. I find that a lot of people keep things that are really important to them nearby as they sleep, so I figured there would have to be some interesting stuff in there. I was right. I dug up a brown envelope with a ton of Polaroids inside. I had expected them to be of his victims, but the fact of the matter made me feel arguably more icky. They were of Fiona. Not only of her though, Anya too. Just holding them felt weird. It was a mix of old family photos and pictures that must have been taken in secret. Anya sleeping in bed next to her husband, a much younger Fiona conked out on the couch. Some of them were stained. I dropped them and ran to wash my hands when I realized with what the sick fuck. I don't need to spell all of this out, do I? I really don't want to. I waited around for a long-ass time. I grabbed some beer from Jem's fridge, kicked back on the sofa in his living room, and resigned to watching TV. After an hour or so, I heard the door being unlocked. I simply stayed seated, waiting for him to come in. He wasn't too shocked to find a stranger in his apartment. Part of me wondered if he even had the emotional capacity to feel that kind of fright. He simply rounded the couch and then stood still, locking eyes with me from across the room. I'd seen him before when he was just a boy. I recognized him, albeit just barely. The Novaks do have some familial resemblance. I stoically took another sip of his beer, then motioned at the armchair across from me. "We need to talk, Jem. Have a seat." "I know you," he said slowly, voice pensive and pale eyes fixated on me as he lowered himself down. "You used to fuck my older sister." "Got one up on you there, it seems," I replied casually, emptying the can in one last swift gulp before tossing it at his face. He didn't move to dodge it, and it bounced off his forehead before landing on the floor with a satisfying clanging. I don't know why I did that. I normally try to keep my cool at all times, but I simply had a sudden burst of aggression right then and there. Jeremy Novak looked utterly unfazed though. "You been expecting me or something?" I asked. He shrugged. "Maybe on some level, I was expecting someone, at least probably not you specifically. You knew of Fiona and me." "Duh. We all kinda knew. Well, not the little ones, but us guys. Tiaz because she told him and me because I saw you a bunch of times." He leaned forward on his elbows. "You know, just occasionally, I managed to get a glimpse in." A shudder ran through the entirety of my body. "So what exactly is it that you're doing here? You trying to make up for something here? None of those girls ever hurt you." "I know. They're not her. Not my sister. Not my mother. My mother's dead anyways, so I missed my shot. And with Fiona, I tried, you know. One time I was nearly there. Had the knife in hand. She was sleeping. Couldn't do it though. Regret it, often." He sighed. Head was acting up. "So you decided to let it out on every other girl you could find? Come on, don't act like you don't get it. You know what she's like. You know what that woman does to people. And Mom was even worse. Sure, you didn't get the feel on her like I did, but you gotta understand when it comes to Fiona, right? Can't say that I do." "Okay, fine. So what do you want? What are you here for?" "I'm taking you with me." Jem rolled his lips together. "Shit. Well, there's nothing I can do really, is there?" "You're welcome to try. I appreciate a bit of spunk, gets me going." I smiled. "I'm serious. There's no chance I could actually overpower you, is there?" "I'm not about to flatter myself. You're like a whole head taller than me." I spread my arms invitingly. "Want to see what you can do?" Jeremy leaned back in his seat. "No, I don't think I will." Not to make this anticlimactic or anything, but Fiona is gonna end up reading this, and I'd rather not let her see this side of me. I'm only like that when it's for work. Jeremy did not see the light of day again, and he suffered as miserable a death as I saw fit for a bastard like him. That irritating calm he had about him broke away within the first hour he spent with me. I've read that he's seemingly not forgotten me, and I'm all the more glad for it. The job itself wasn't exactly delightful though. I took no joy in it. Rather did a number on me, to be honest. When I got home that night, I bought 3 burgers and a bottle of vodka. I destroyed them all in one sitting and then passed out in my living room. My roommate woke me up, called me a whiny bitch, and then we ended up nearly bashing each other's heads in. Not my finest moment. I like to think my coping mechanisms have improved at least a little bit, but I'm not quite sure. Life's really just been passing by me these last couple years. Being here, being back home, it's really nice. Better than it has been in ages. I know I've pledged allegiance to another party, but I'm not going to be complicit in the woods being destroyed. I can't go on kidding myself. I've tried to hate this place for a long time, and I've tried to hate its warden, but as it is now, honestly, I'm just regretting I left. Hello strangers, I'm back from the half-dead. Jacek was kind enough to post the last time, and even though I haven't had the balls to read it yet, I'm very grateful. I'm just not ready to learn more about Jeremy yet. Our family is so fucked up, isn't it? I had a talk with my dad, a very unpleasant one. Jacek had tied him to a chair down in the basement and gagged him, and he was still sitting there, staring ahead with steely malice in his eyes when the miller, my brother, and I made our way down the stairs to him. Jacek stepped forward and removed the rolled-up piece of wool head stuffed down my father's throat. "Gross. You got my sock all wet," he commented, unrolling the saliva-drenched article of clothing before tossing it aside. Was time I washed it anyway. "Son of a bitch," Dad spat, breathing heavily. "Hey, come on, don't drag my mom into this. So I think your kid's got some questions for you." He motioned for us to step forward. "I'm just here to help them out in case you're gonna try and be stubborn." "You're Hetman's boy," Maxwell muttered. "Your father was just as much of a bastard as you." "Sure," Jacek said, not batting an eye. "Stop it, Dad. Just tell me what your game is and we won't have to hurt you. Seeing as being civil is obviously not an option with you." Not afraid of you, my father growled back. Your second-born thought that too, Jasak answered. Hour later, I had him wishing he was just a twitch in your nuts again. Just letting you know, considering you're putting forth a challenge here. It seemed to take my father all of his willpower to pull himself together. He squared his shoulders, inhaling deeply, and then sagged back in his chair, eyes closed. Despite his reluctance, he spoke. When I was a young man, I used to talk to an angel, he said in a low, brittle voice. He told me what I would become. A modern knight of faith started when I was in my teens and lasted all the way up until I moved here with Anaya. He never came to visit me in these woods, unholy ground. No matter how hard I tried to reach out to him afterwards, he simply wouldn't show. Sometimes I'd get far away to contact him. I'd drive for hours, but he never came back, even when I had my mind screaming for him. This place took everything from me that made me special. I would have become a great man, and your freak show robbed me of that. Then why the fuck did you marry Mom in the first place? I snapped. Because of you. A thin, sardonic smile tugged on his lips. Hadn't planned for Fiona fucking Novak, the princess. You were an accident, just one slip up and there I was. Stuck with you. Had to play baby daddy in the middle of a haunted forest. A shotgun wedding is what it was. Your grandparents would have hunted me down if I hadn't made an honest woman of your mother. And that's my fault. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Bewilderment turning my voice shrill and squeaky. You knocked up a girl and then decided to be a dick about having to step up, and I'm to blame for you not keeping it in your pants. Great knight of faith you are, Casimir snorted. Can't even put a condom on right. I threw him a sidelong glance. Now that's ironic. He shut up, I'm trying to support you here. Right. I'm sorry. Maxwell regarded us with scornful eyes. I can't believe you two are my children. Casimir, you just had to throw your life away too, didn't you? Follow your sister into this hellhole. Ain't no holy light reaching you here, son. If you wind up here, that's it for you. You're lost. Just like Anaya, just like Fiona. You're gonna die because you came here, and it's not going to be a peaceful, dignified death. Sayas flinched visibly, but collected himself almost right away. There was something in his eyes though, something that hadn't been there before. Siaz, do you? I began, but he cut me off. Later heart pounding, I turned back to my father. So, you hate me, you hate the woods, you hated Mom. I didn't hate your mother. She was a misguided little thing. She needed me. Felt good to be needed. But she pushed away any good sense I tried to instill in her. Ania never needed you for shit, Jashik remarked, throwing me an apologetic look. He added, sorry for butting in, gorgeous, but this piss stain is talking out of his ass. I knew Ania, she was like my godmom or something. He didn't let her see me for a long time, but we were close enough. Returning his attention to Maxwell, he continued. She didn't need anyone. Yes, she was a cold woman from what I've heard, and not always fair, but damn if she wasn't independent. So what my old man used to say about her too. Can't judge her as a mother, but I know she always held her own. My wife is none of your business, kid, Maxwell grunted. Kid? For fuck's sake, I'm pushing 40. You'll just say anything you can to justify not listening to anyone else, won't you? Jacek gave a bitter laugh. Not to filth like you. Only clever thing my daughter ever did was reject you. So you knew about us? I asked incredulously. And not stupid, Fiona. Only Ania never allowed me to confront you. Besides, when one day you stop sneaking out and suddenly start wearing wedding gowns, demonic magic is a sound conclusion. I took a deep breath. Okay, hold it. All that good stuff aside, why would you try and take me out after all these years? If this is about the evening redness, why get it now? Did you only learn of it recently? And how did you find out? Who told you? A beatific smile suddenly bloomed on my father's face. The angel came back to me. He told me to find the sleeper and to offer it to him. The world can then finally submit to order. Say, what do you look like? Your angel? Jacek chimed in, a strange, meaningful undertone in his voice. Dad let out a soft, near-reverent sigh. He's the most beautiful person I've ever seen. He's all in white. He's not old, but not wholly youthful. His hair is like fresh fallen snow, and his eyes hold the wisdom of centuries. Something about this response seemed to take the miller aback, but he had like a human form. He looked like a guy. My father nodded, still gazing emptily into the distance. I cleared my throat. Why didn't they want it before? I mean, seeing as God's all-knowing, the angels must have been aware of the evening redness. They didn't need it, but now there's a power struggle going on. It's not just chaos against order anymore. A bunch of other wannabe deities are trying to make a comeback out there looking for acolytes, Maxwell explained impatiently. I threw Jacek a brief glance. He had gone very quiet beside me. That much is true, he hurried to confirm. Nick is concerned about it as well. It took him some effort to rise to power. It's not just anyone who can decide over the fate of human souls. He doesn't want to lose his position. So what's new? Who's trying to topple the existing forces? Oh, a bunch of guys. I hear Loki is back, doing considerably well for himself. The old fox. Maybe a serious contender. The miller shrugged, brows furrowed despite the lightness of his tone. Not with the sleeper in the Lord's hands, Maxwell gritted out. Or in Nick's, Jacek added. But I'll admit that I've no idea how such a great shift in power would translate to our lives. I don't want the forest to be wiped out, much as I like the idea of eternal darkness and a world in sin. I need to protect my land, I told him. I can't have anything happening to the forest people. I know they're safe with things the way they are, so I need it to stay this way. Nobody is getting the sleeper. I tilted my head at my former lover ever so slightly, and he mirrored the movement. Is that okay with you? Can you accept that? Yeah, of course I can. I'm not gonna work against you, he said softly. Fiona, you don't know what you're doing. Dad pressed out, sounding like he could barely contain himself. Give the sleeper to me. I ignored the demand, locking eyes with him in what I hoped came off as an indifferent cold stare. My soul, for how long have you had it? When the angel reappeared, I asked him about it. He told me how to find it, how to trap it. He assured me it would work on the evening redness as well. I sincerely doubted one could simply trap a being of this power and size. It wasn't the same as a little white rabbit. My head hurts, I muttered. Let's take this upstairs, boys. I need a break. We left Maxwell down in the basement. Casimir and I sat down on the living room couch while Jacek went out onto the porch for a smoke. So, down there, I began with a nervous chuckle. My brother was staring at the black, silent TV screen, avoiding my gaze. I scooted closer to him, one of my arms snaking around his midriff. I got that wrong, right? You just startled because Dad was being a dick. He didn't respond. The tip of his tongue moved to moisten his dry lips. Casimir, I'm reading too much into that, aren't I asked, trying to mask the desperation creeping into my voice. Remember how I talked to Jacek alone, before he first left after coming back? He finally spoke. Yeah? Wanted him to stay. Still need him to stay. You gotta have someone, just in case. What are you talking about? Oh, come on, Fi. You know, don't you? He turned to face me. His eyes were glistening. Look, I'm not gonna drop dead tomorrow or anything. I'm taking my meds and I'm gonna live just as long as you. I'm sick, but it's not a death sentence. I can go on for a long time. If I watch myself, I'll be fine. Well, not fine. Fine. It's not gonna be the same again ever, but all things considered, I've got hope. This whole cynical thing, that's just the fear. I haven't gotten over that yet. I swallowed hard. What is it? Can we not name it? I don't feel like I can talk about it that way yet. So, clinical. I don't know. He grimaced, looking distinctly uneasy. Whenever I think about it, I'm constantly switching between jumping into a panic or downplaying it entirely, and like, neither of those are good. I suppose I'm just really confused. I know I'll be okay eventually, but right now I don't want to think about it until I've reached a point where I can deal with it level-headedly. That's why I came here, I guess. Alright, I said slowly. And physically, how do you feel? Normal. The first couple weeks were like a really long flu. That's why I went to get checked in the first place. Now I've mostly recovered. I'm still a little more fatigued though, not as energetic anymore. But that could also be the stress. Got night sweats occasionally, but not like I used to. I reached up to massage my temples. Okay, so if you need something, anything, don't ever hesitate to ask. And please take care of yourself. Don't overdo it. I've literally no medical knowledge, but the second you start feeling off, let me know. Noticing how frantic I sounded, I willed my heart to stop racing. Casimir, I love you more than anything else in this world. When you're ready to talk more, I'll be here. Sies looked up to meet my gaze, wiping the corners of his eyes with his thumb. I know. I got up, patting down my white tulle skirt. I really don't want to go now, but I need to deal with the sleeper. Of course, the eldritch horror in our backyard. Siet snorted. I've got an idea. It's a reach. but maybe it'll get me places. Could you stay here, watch Dad? Sure, and I know I don't need to tell you, but be careful. I will. Out on the porch, the air was chilly and fresh. Icicles had formed on the edge of the roof. Hanging down like blades gleaming in the cold sunlight, Jacek was leaning against one of the wooden pillars, cigarette in mouth, his arms stretched up. He was fingering the tip of the icicle right above his head, and I was momentarily distracted by the view of the shirt riding up beneath his open jacket. His eyes flicked down to me, and he dropped his hand, smiling sheepishly. "So, you talked to CAs?" he inquired. He'd already hinted at something there before. Still, it was harder to speak against the lump in my throat. Yeah. Hema, try and focus for now. Evening redness. That sleeping thing. I think I want to try and talk to it. Jacek frowned. I tell you that sounds dangerous as fuck, but I'm sure you're well aware. Acutely aware. I think I'll ask the Bannock for help again. I know it didn't go well the last time, but now that I'm actively looking to contact the sleeper, I reckon it's exactly what I need. Fair enough. Want to come with? I asked at the same time. Hedman grinned. Definitely. We started marching up to the sauna, falling into step beside one another. His shoulder kept brushing against mine, but neither of us moved aside. Where were you? I asked, breaking the silence. Nick, what'd he do to you? He locked me into one of my apartments. I was grounded, basically. No cell phone service, no internet. He made it feel like it lasted a whole month. It's easy dishing out shitty punishments when you can literally create pocket dimensions in which time and space works the way you want. Fuck, that sounds awful. It's not the first time he's hurt me, or imprisoned me. He's done worse to others. Not always a breeze dealing with the guy, but I'm used to it. He shrugged. Are you mad at me? What? No. He let out a perplexed snort of laughter. Why would I be? I am not like that anymore. I've dealt with my anger issues. I swallowed thickly. For what it's worth, I really regret not telling you about my missing soul back when we were, if I had. I mean, we could have talked it out, right? And you would have sent licorice after it for me. Guess so. Wish I'd trusted you. Wish I hadn't pressured you. Got that from my father, I think. In hindsight, my folks were kind of fucked up as well. You want to talk about that sometime? I offered. I'd be glad to, when this is all over. But for now, I really don't want to steal your focus. We have more important things to do right now, he reminded me, voice gentle and perhaps a touch wistful. I agreed, albeit with a heavy heart. Knocking on the door of the sauna, we waited, exchanging an awkward smile in silence. When the old spirit answered, I told him about my idea. Disappointingly, he seemed rather uneasy about it. Seeing as you nearly shook the entity awake the last time, that does sound like an awful plan, he gibbered. But I need to communicate with it somehow, and if it stays asleep, that's not going to happen. I have to, I don't know, negotiate with it or warn it or something. The devil will come for it soon. If Fiona doesn't rouse the sleeper, then he will. He wants to consume it, which is most likely going to give him power over these woods. You don't want that, Jacek added gravely. The Bannock shook his head. I'm satisfied with my current warden. He threw me a benevolent smile. And I've no doubt that once the beast is in power, he would devour the rest of us as well. Either that or enslave us. Both prospects are equally unpleasant to me. I see why you'd want this, Eres, but I fear I truly cannot help you. This is no matter of clairvoyance or divination. What happened before was an accident. It worked though. Just let me stick my head in that bucket again and bring Arcadia's spirit out. I paused. Another weird sentence to say aloud. Doesn't matter if it wasn't the intended effect the first time. You're aware that it still can and will make you lose your mind if you aren't careful. I guess. I just need to... I may have a better idea. Do you remember when you came to the sauna some nights ago? There was a lady here, a red-haired fairy. Find her, and she will give you what you need. She sells concoctions that allow communication on different planes of existence. I rubbed my head and thought, I didn't doubt it. The woman had indeed kind of given me drug dealer vibes. Fair enough. Where can I find her? That might be a touch problematic. I will of course let her know that you are looking for her, but I do not know when she will come to visit me again. It may be a few days till I next see her. My shoulders sagged, but I need to talk to her as soon as possible. I know not the fairy's usual haunts. This is all I can do for you, but fear not, her visits have always been quite frequent. I palmed my forehead. Okay, well, please tell her it's urgent. Thank you for everything." On that rather frustrating note, we parted ways. We spent some time searching the woods for any sign of the folk, but our efforts remained unrewarded. Eventually, we gave up and turned in for the night. I asked Jacek if there was any way he could delay the coming of Nick, but he was understandably uncertain. Best to just hope he has something else on his plate at the moment. If I bring you up again, he might end up doing the exact opposite, drop by early out of pure spite. I got that, and thus settled on waiting back home. It was all we could think to do. It was weird though, sitting in the living room together with CAs napping on the couch beside us. Part of me wanted to talk about Jacek and myself in a where do we go from here kind of way. But that was a conversation I truly did not want to rush. Like he'd said, with everything going on, it would be more sensible to wait. We chatted about some lighter stuff, and then ended up turning on the television. There was a rerun of an old horror movie which we tuned into. I hadn't taken the time to really get into a movie for a while, so I didn't recognize it until Jacek spoke up. "That's Eight-Legged Freaks." I let out a quiet laugh. "Holy shit, you're right. We watched that together, remember?" "I remember you being squeamish," he teased, scooting a little closer to me. I was not. I pointedly turned my head away. You were making all those little noises like a guinea pig. It was adorable." He gave me a smug grin. "Ain't no shame in it. I'm just saying, I can't believe that with everything you've always had going on around you, you still got scared from a comedy." "A horror comedy," I corrected, "with spiders." He laughed out loud, only stifling it when his eyes briefly fell on the sleeping form of my brother. Fiona Novak. Seduces forest monsters but gets scared of spiders on TV. His voice had lost its mocking edge, suddenly sounding warm and deeply sentimental. His gaze kept flickering to and away from me, his fingers nimbly pulling a pack of cigarettes from his pocket only to play with it in his lap. "Try Jacek Hedman, works for the devil but can't look me in the eyes without turning scarlet," I returned, moving closer to him. "Yeah, well," he exhaled shakily, hands stilling. "Harsh. True. I do not know how to come back from that." "You don't have to." He smiled, tentatively raising his arm and slowly inching it into my direction. "It's okay. You can hug me," I encouraged with a smirk. "Oh, you're just gonna make fun of me, aren't you?" he grunted, arm coming closer. "Always. Go on, do it. Just bring it in." He groaned, snatching me by the shoulders and quickly but gently pulling me to his chest. I pressed my nose into the crook of his neck before sinking down to rest my head in his lap, leaning against his belly. "Damn, but you were smug about this," he muttered fondly. "Count on it." I was actually beginning to relax a little bit when a blood-curdling scream rang out from the basement. I sat up so quickly that I accidentally bumped the top of my head against Jacek's chin. Tios jerked up from his pillow, blinking and wiping drool from the corner of his mouth. For a second, we all merely stared at one another in shock. Then we sprang to our feet, rushing for the stairway to the basement just as another cry erupted from behind the door. I grabbed the handle, ready to tear it open, only to find that it wouldn't budge. "It's jammed," I yelled out, jiggling at it in desperation. "Don't think so," Jacek shouted, pressing himself up to the door as I stepped aside. "Open up," he barked. "I know you're down there. Open the fuck up." "We tied Dad up though," Casimir supplied. "And not talking to him," he muttered curtly as he started banging against the wood with both fists and raised his voice again. "Open the damn door. Open it. Don't you fucking dare." He kicked the frame in sheer frustration. "Fuck." The noises grew louder and more unsettling. I thought I could hear the chair falling over as my father's screams turned increasingly desperate. His voice was all gurgly and weird, but he seemed to be begging for forgiveness. Not mercy, forgiveness. "I'm sorry," he kept on wailing, over and over again. "I did what I could. I swear I tried." My heart was pounding like a sledgehammer. "Dad?" I bellowed, spittle flying from my mouth. "Dad?" I tried the door handle again, shaking it furiously. Another cry of agony. Then, everything fell silent. The door suddenly gave in to my demanding tugs, and I staggered back as it swung open. The three of us descended the stairs in a hurry, CAs hastily flicking on the light switch. The bulb that came fizzling to life revealed a gruesome sight. My father, still tied to the chair that was lying on the floor on its side, had fallen limp. Blood had pooled beneath his body, the source of which being a hole in his stomach that was leaking red everywhere, soaking his shirt and freely running down. As my gaze traveled up his broken frame, it stopped once more at his throat. It was wide open. There's no other way to describe it. It hadn't been slit or cut. It had been torn out. I doubled over and threw up. A bit of my vomit dripped into and mixed with the puddle of blood. I couldn't look away, despite it making me feel dizzy. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Casimir cover his face with his palms, knees trembling but not quite buckling like he was fighting it. Jacek was grimacing, his mouth moving as though he was saying something, probably cursing, but I couldn't hear a word. There was this ringing in my ears, like I'd stood too close to a gun being fired. I swayed on my feet, then caught myself. Don't pass out. For fuck's sake, do not pass out again. I looked over at my brother to see him walking towards me with his arms outstretched, almost in slow motion at first, before suddenly being upon me in a heartbeat, wrapping his whole body around me. We're okay. We're staying awake. Yeah. No matter how often we're gonna be beaten unconscious, how much sick shit we have to see, we're gonna bounce back. It'll be okay. I held on to my brother like my life depended on it, feeling like I could hear his pulse thrashing. He pulled back only to lock eyes with me, then cupped my cheeks on either side and pushed my forehead up to his, hard. When we eventually parted, we were breathing heavily, my own teary expression reflected in his. Let's cry about this later, CA's breathed, voice cracking. When we've got the time. I nodded emphatically. Okay. Wiping the wetness from my puffy cheeks, I rolled my lips together, squaring my shoulders. Ciaz cracked his neck and knuckles, stretching his arms. I feel like doing some yoga right now, just to wind down, you know, filling the air with words, terrified of silence. You two, shit. I am so sorry, Jacek began, voice faltering. I don't know what to say. We wouldn't have let him live anyway, would we? My brother wondered aloud, tone soft and pensive. I'm not sure, I replied haltingly. I don't think so. What the hell happened here? You know something, don't you? Ciaz asked the dark miller who had folded his hands on the back of his neck, looking at the basement ceiling with a lost, shaken expression. His entire body was tense and cramped, muscles straining against the sleeves of his black shirt. I thought I knew, he pressed out. Guess I was right. I fucked up. I should have told you as soon as I suspected, but I didn't. I thought I'd just deal with it on my own. I didn't want you to lose focus. I didn't want to put more on your plate. I cannot fucking believe this. He took a few deep breaths, steadying himself. Damn, Fiona, I'm so sorry. So tell me now, I prompted gently. The being that used to come and talk to your father, that wasn't an angel. The wind was picking up outside, howling as it swept down on the roof and rattling the window frames. I'm not going to make this your problem, Jacek told me. I do believe I know who did this, and I will take care of it, I promise. We both can, together if you want, but I don't think it's an immediate concern. I can't deal with that right now, I confirmed. You think that's okay? Pretty sure. You know, I'm surprised your father never questioned his angel, he remarked. Kinda almost makes me feel bad for the guy, like he just wanted that to be happening so badly. Just say it, my folks are fucked up. Well, I sighed. I'm starting to think it's like a curse or something. We're all either chronically unlucky or batshit crazy or just plain assholes. Would really be best for the world if there weren't any more of us floating around. Here's hoping my sisters are normal at least. We could invite them over sometime, CA's prompted, giving me what he likely intended to be an encouraging smile. Sure, they'd be glad to catch up. Right, I muttered. We can throw a goddamn party. After trying and failing to comfort myself and each other, CA's and Jacek then went off to bed. That left only me awake, sitting on the living room couch and absently fumbling with the TV remote. I should have probably done like the boys and at least attempted to get some rest, but something told me I wouldn't be able to lie still anyways. Better to keep my mind occupied. The knock at the door didn't draw my attention immediately. It took 2-3 louder bangs for me to perk up and make my way over to the door. Hope sparking in my heart, I opened it to find telltale locks of red shine out from the darkness. So, I hear you were looking for me, the woman began, unbothered enough by the storm and the cold to give me a self-satisfied smirk, looking to make a deal perhaps. Correct. I moved aside, motioning for her to come in. This isn't a permanent invitation into my home, mind you. Just for tonight. You seem to be fond of things that last only one night, she commented, winking as she stepped inside, but I catch your meaning. The Bannock says you could help me contact a sleeper under the Red Meadow. She shrugged. I might. What are you looking for exactly? Anything that'll help me communicate with that thing. I need to get on the same level with it, and no matter how I'm gonna do that, it needs to happen soon. There's not much time, I explained, hoping she wouldn't pry. Well, then you must be very glad I came, she remarked, leaning forward to reach out and touch my cheek. Her fingers ghosted over the side of my face, gentle to a fault, but I brushed them aside when her thumb came to rest against my lower lip. Not quite that glad, I answered. She drew away, her lips pursing. Too bad. Hey, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be opposed, but there's kinda someone I've got feelings for. Would they mind? Pretty sure he would. Shame. Anyways, I have something for you. But just so you know what you'll be receiving, it's a blend of herbs. You'll need to smoke it in a pipe or something of the sort. It will induce a trance that should put you on the same plane of awareness as the evening redness. I won't deny that it could end up not having the desired effect, but overall, I trust in my handiwork, as may you. She looked at me with clear, bright eyes. At the very least, she appeared to believe what she said. So I'll basically pass out. When am I going to wake up again? To be frank, it depends. You'll have to find a way to break out of the state on your own. Of course, that means you will be taking a risk, but let it be known that my creations have yet to kill anybody. Then again, no human has ever consumed these goods. Not really selling me on this, I gotta say. I appreciate the honesty though. She nodded. Naturally, I'm not one to deceive when it comes to my dealings. Mislead maybe, but only occasionally and not in your case. I've been told about what's at stake. And you'd still recommend I take my chances with this blend of yours? Definitely. It's your only chance, at any rate. And if you trust me to, then I'd be glad to stay and watch over you while you're in trance. If push comes to shove, I could attempt to wake you. I took a deep breath. Okay, yeah, that sounds doable. Great. You won't regret it, probably. You want something in return though, don't you? I crossed my arms. The redhead gave me a faltering smile. I do. Well, what is it? Don't let the beast encroach upon our land. That's all I can ask for. All I will ask of you. I'll do what I can. No. I'll take your word for it. Don't try, don't do what you can. Simply do it. We know you can. I swallowed. You're right, I will. Then will you go with me and take the blend? She asked. Right away? Yes, I guess that'd be best. My gaze flitted to the staircase. No time. I hastily grabbed a pen and paper to jot down a short note. In case something happens, I love you. McKay, ready. Where are we going? It'll be more fruitful to conduct it outside. The cold doesn't bother you according to the Bannock. Not most of the time, no. Good. Then, she opened the door, extending her other hand to me. Let's head out. The wind was whistling through the house for the brief moment in which the door was open. I was quick to follow her outside, shutting it behind my back and straightening up. The redhead immediately began trudging her way through the layer of snow covering the ground. Her tracks were almost instantly covered again. It was hard to see ahead through the white flakes whirling around us and landing at our feet. The woman's hair was as a torch in the night. She had set a punishing pace, and while I didn't have trouble keeping up per se, I could sense the urgency in every one of her steps. Do you have a name? I called out against the wind that carried her scent back to me. Rosemary and honey, the same fragrance that had already caught my attention that night in the sauna. Sure, she yelled back. Will you tell me? You know I want. Worth a shot. Her laughter cut through the howl of the storm. As we neared the edge of the woods, I noticed the outline of an enormous creature silhouetted against the already pitch-black sky, just a little darker than the shadows. Well met, Fiona. The Leshy's voice droned across the field like a thunderclap, the sound weirdly comforting. I smiled up at him, wondering if he could see it. I'm glad you're here, Alexei. He knelt down, glowing eyes lowering themselves to my level. His snout puffed clouds of heated breath into the chilly night air, bathing me in warmth as it drew closer. For a brief moment, I placed my palm on it in greeting. I'm guessing you already know what I'm about to do, I began. Yes, and it causes me great unease. First, Arek. He trailed off, tone laced with hurt, an ancient sting of grief that had never healed. Now you. It won't be me, I told him. Whatever happens, I'm not going to go out like Arcadius. Liar. How can you know? I don't, but I'm hoping. Then hope is all there is. Alexi's voice was sharp and icy. Pure optimism is the only security I can expect to receive. the only thing assuring me that your fragile life is not going to end tonight." I turned to the redhead. "I thought the drug was safe." She nodded. "As safe as such a concoction can be." The Leshy growled. "It's not merely the blend I worry about. What will happen once you are on the same wavelength as the evening redness? I've told you what the sleeper did to your ancestor. There is no guarantee your mind will remain intact during such an encounter. You will be communicating with something incomprehensible, something entirely unnatural. You will be offering yourself to the entity that drove the strongest man I have ever known into a frenzy, that drove him to end his own life. Alexei, what state will you be in when you emerge from slumber? Will you even know who you are, who I am?" I rolled my lips together. He sounded like he was scolding me, but there was a frantic undertone swinging along, urgent, afraid, almost desperate. "There's no other way," I said softly. He fell silent, letting out another long huff of air, almost like a sigh. "You know there's no other way, right?" I repeated, reaching out once more to touch his snout. He pushed it into my palm with such force that it nearly sent me staggering back. "In doing this for the woods, you are." He slowly stretched his limbs, lying down in the snow. I knelt down in front of him, watching as his form began to shift and warp until the bearded man was sitting before us. His face was a set mask, but there was a twist to his lips and a tremble in his brow that he seemed to be unable to suppress. He couldn't hold my gaze. Averting his eyes, he pulled out his pipe, handing it to the red-haired woman. "Fill it with your poison, fairy," he ordered, "and be careful about it, if you know what's good for you." She took it, visibly biting back a comment at his commanding tone. She reached into her satchel and began to dutifully stuff the pipe with what I assumed to be the blend in question. I took a deep breath, no longer able to ignore the rapid beating of my heart. "I guess this is it then. I'm gonna meet the sleeper." Alexei grunted. "Don't you dare feign enthusiasm." "Hey, I need to do something to handle the anxiety," I argued. "Besides, who's to say that it'll go wrong? This might end up saving our asses." He rolled his eyes, giving me a snort. "It might not. It might get you killed, and I know what the alternative entails. It simply doesn't make the prospect of seeing your blood spill any more appealing. You know, there was a time when you probably wouldn't have had as much of a problem with that. I would have never taken any pleasure in it. Maybe I would have been more indifferent, but, well, Fiona, there's an understanding between the two of us, isn't there? An understanding." He sighed deeply, like a kindergarten teacher might at a rather slow child. "I find you foolish and bordering on insufferable, and surely you'll never forgive me for how I used to delight in terrorizing you, but you live for my woods. You find comfort among the trees, my trees. You would give yourself to preserve them. This part of the world is ours, and ours alone. I'm very happy that you are the one I'm sharing it with right now. What you're about to do is dangerous, and you have been exposing yourself to all these threats for far too long. Please know that if things were different, if our roles were reversed and you weren't the replaceable mayfly that you unfortunately are, if the woods could live on without me, then I would do this in your stead." "Okay, replaceable mayfly kinda hurt, but I didn't intend it to." "I know, and I know what you're saying," I replied. "It's ready," the redhead announced, handing me the lit pipe. I took it with trembling fingers. "Let me guard your sleep," Alexei said, prompting me to nod. Rising to his feet, he stretched his arms over his head, flexing his muscles and straightening his spine. He began to shift shapes once again, tufts of brown hair shooting out of his skin, all around his face and neck. His nose lengthened and turned into a wide, leathery snout. A large bear was standing in front of me, gazing down on me with distinct kindness. I crawled up to the foot of the nearest tree. As the fairy sat down beside me, I slowly raised the pipe to my lips, closing my eyes as I took a long drag. The fumes I inhaled weren't at all what I expected. An almost sickly sweet taste filled my mouth, penetrating my senses and clouding my mind in an instant. My eyelids suddenly seemed to be made of lead, weighing too much for me to keep them open. Instinctively, I fought the daze, fight or flight kicking in as I felt my limbs grow weaker, my whole body involuntarily relaxing. Fear crept into my chest, but the natural surge of adrenaline that would have gone hand in hand with such a panic never came. I couldn't move anymore. My hand fell limp, the pipe rolling down into the snow. The fairy leaned over me, her face a pool of mixed expressions, concern, doubt, and strongest of all, hope. She gently grabbed both of my wrists, placing them in my lap. "It's all right," she whispered. voice barely audible against the whistling wind. "You'll make it." She drew back, and I took note of the Leshy in his newly adopted form approaching. He carefully lowered himself down over my lap. His warm weight came to cover my feet, legs, and waist, with his back leaning to mostly cover my upper body. Somehow he didn't crush me. A wave of calm washed over me at the sensation of unnaturally silky fur brushing against my skin. I finally allowed my eyes to fall shut as the whirling snowflakes seemed to blur into an endless stream of white, giving in to the push of unconsciousness, letting go. It felt like being sucked into a vortex. What little safety I'd felt when Alexei had laid down on top of me was stripped away when I was plunged into completely different surroundings. It reminded me a little bit of the hallway between hell and the surface. There were no walls, no floors to stand on, only swirling colors that, as much as I would have liked to describe them, I didn't recognize. They were foreign, alien, unlike anything I'd ever seen. The sight was gnawing on my consciousness, forcing its way into my mind as it tried desperately to block it out. It was like seeing Nick in his own true form the first time I'd met him, an incomprehensible view with the ability to shake one's perception of the natural world. Trying to keep my wits about me, I decided to shut my eyes and block the invading impressions out as best I could, only it didn't work. I didn't have eyes. And that's when I realized it. I didn't have arms either, nor legs or feet. I was nothing. I didn't exist. I was a mere speck of sentience hovering around in an endless, timeless, spaceless whirl of vibrations, sound, and color. What if I never woke up again? What if Alexei had been right? What if this was it for me? A cruel version of eternity. I wanted to scream, give voice to this mind-shattering dread, but I had no mouth to do so. Worse, I wasn't alone. The longer I lingered, the stronger I felt the presence of another being, some such incredible entity. I tried to spot it, somehow figure out where it was, only to feel our minds touching as I searched for its consciousness. Even without ears, I heard it speak. "Hello, you're terrified." The voice belonged to neither a man nor a woman. It was neither deep nor high, it simply was. "Yes," I responded. I don't know how, but I did. "Because of me?" "Yes." "Why?" "I don't know what you are, or if I'll ever get out of here. Where even are we?" "Nowhere. Just sleeping." "Oh, right. You will be all right." Somehow these words made me feel immensely soothed. "Thank you. I'm relieved." "Are you the traveler Arcadius?" "You feel like him, but not quite. It confuses me." "I'm his descendant." "What's that?" "Someone of his bloodline, just further down. A child of the child, and his child." "And you? What are you?" "Silence." "Then I am." For some reason, that was all the answer I needed. In a strange way, it made perfect sense. "Why did you kill Arcadius?" "Did I do that? I thought he merely fell asleep." "No, you drove him mad, and then he unalived himself." "Drove him mad? That was not my intention. All I wanted was to speak with him." It took me a moment to understand what I had just learned. This entity had had no clue what it was doing when it invaded Arcadius' mind. Well, shit. Okay, but why did you want to talk to him? "I only needed a place to rest." Arcadius was something special. I knew that his body could contain me, and I longed to sleep. I wanted to ask him permission to lay myself to rest in his physical form. I promised to preserve him for as long as he allowed. He would have lived for so much longer, and in perfect condition. I can do that. I would have cared meticulously for my vessel. I had no idea he would misinterpret my meaning this much. When he fell limp before me, I thought he was offering himself. Wow. I am very sorry. I never wanted to destroy him. I'm ashamed to admit that I have such little knowledge of the human body as to have not realized he had ended his own life. Hey, I understand. Or, I think I do. Okay, look, there's a lot I'd like to ask you, but I need you to know you're in danger. There's someone out to get you, to eat you. I know, there always was. Lesser creatures have been trying to catch and consume me since the beginning of my existence. I thought I was safe here. Your hiding spot has been compromised. I see, that's very disappointing. It's very kind of you to come and warn me, but I assure you that I can defend myself should the need arise. I felt a pang of dread. And how would you do that? You'd end up destroying everything, wouldn't you? Not quite everything, I'm sure. Only that which would get in the way. That doesn't sound too promising, not gonna lie. Then are you looking for another way? Do you have a plan? I don't know. I thought maybe you would. There's no chance you could channel your power, is there? I couldn't. Not if I were forced to emerge from my slumber. So as soon as you leave Arcadius' corpse, you'd be completely unhinged. I could certainly try to do as little damage as possible, but seeing as I couldn't even tell your ancestor has been dead all these years, I really can't make any promises. Looking pretty bleak then, huh? For a moment, we both remained silent, and then I had the greatest idea ever. It was all so simple. There had never been a reason to be afraid. Why hadn't I thought to simply stick to my tried and true strategy? I'm Fiona Novak, descendant of Arcadius the Traveler, and I'm not scared of monsters. I fucking proposition them. I woke up to feel my feet dangling in the air and wind ruffling my skirts. Even before I opened my eyes, I realized I was lying on a wooden surface. Twigs were pricking my side, prompting me to turn and roll over. I wasn't done sleeping, just a little bit longer. This certainly wasn't the most cozy place to rest, but somehow it gave me this wonderful feeling of comfort and safety, of home. I was then poked with a stick. I groaned. Hot, told you. I heard the familiar voice of the red-haired fairy exclaim in joy. The Leshy pulled back his finger with a rumbling sigh. That's a relief. I slowly sat up, eyes fluttering open, a smile spreading on my face before I could even collect my thoughts. It's good to see you. How long was I out for? I asked Alexei. He raised his head, prompting me to look around. Cold rays of sunlight were making their way over the horizon, not yet touching the treetops, but reaching the meadow, painting it an even brighter shade of red. I let go of a long, deep sigh. This was my land, the picture of icy serenity, life, raw and unregulated, pure in the most untamed sense of the word. Maybe not hallowed, but sacred in its own right. Home. The entire night, the wood demon told me. I nodded. Good. The boys were unlikely to be up yet, saving them a lot of concern. A look over at the house confirmed my assumption. It was lying in utter peace and silence. That's when I realized I was kind of looking down on everything. The Leshy was standing upright, the fairy cowering on his shoulder. He towered over even the tallest of trees, cradling me in the palm of his hand. My snow boots were hanging down freely, as was a good portion of my wide layered skirt. We're so high up. I love this. I got that impression the first time I held you, Alexei replied, eyes glowing almost fondly. Will you let me know what you've achieved? I don't think I should, I replied. I'm pretty sure you'll see for yourself soon enough. Where from do I know this being? The low voice that could not be defined rang out in my mind. He feels familiar. You've met him before, when he was just a kid. A really long time ago, I answered wordlessly. You kind of owe him an apology for what happened with Arcadius. To Alexei, I said, I hope you weren't too worried when I didn't wake up right away. The wood demon let out a derisive snort, turning to look the other way. He carried me across the red meadow, where now, finally, Arcadius' body was beginning to decompose. I felt a strange sense of peace settling over my soul. After gently setting me down on the porch, Alexei straightened his arm, allowing the red-headed fairy to slide down off of it. It looked so effortless and playful that I couldn't help but wonder how many times she'd done that before. So I take it you were satisfied with my goods? She asked, boldly raising her hands to her hips. Very much so. I'm very glad to hear that. Now it is time for you to make good on your end of the bargain, as I have no doubt you'll manage. She grinned, lifting a brow. It won't be easy, but you are obligated to, as they say, deliver. Don't forget that. I nodded, a smile playing on my lips. Returning inside, I hastily grabbed the note I'd left for the boys, crumpled it up, and threw it away. Creeping up the stairs, I was careful not to be noisy. I peeked into Casimir's room to see him passed out with his hair mussy like a big bird's nest in the absence of gel. Gently shutting the door again, I made my way over to where I could hear J.S. snoring. I tiptoed over to his bed where he was lying face down in his pillow. I cautiously lowered myself down on the mattress beside him and began to run my fingertips over the back of his head. I allowed my thoughts to wander for merely a minute before straightening, adjusting my skirt and taking a long cleansing breath. Just as I was turning to leave, J6 stirred, rolling over in bed with a deep hum. His eyes blinked open and he squinted at me. What you say? He cawed, clearing his throat. I didn't say anything, I replied. Didn't mean to wake you. He grinned lazily, rubbing his forehead. I had a nice dream. Yeah? What about? I asked, sitting back down by his side. He reached for the glass of water on his nightstand, took a sip, gurgled and spit it back out. Not gonna tell you, just like that. He dropped back into his pillows, crossing his wrists above his head. Why don't you tie me to the bed frame and get it out of me? There's probably not a single other person who could make an invitation like that sound so sincere and casual. I stared at him for a beat, giving a sigh. Got no cuffs up here anymore. It's all in the basement. If I go down there now, I'm just gonna be reminded of Dad and how he's all gross and dead. I wouldn't be in the mood anymore. Understandable. Don't look so disappointed. You know I can make do without, I answered, grinning as I climbed onto the bed with him. I'll spare you the details. We were mostly focused on keeping quiet anyways. I didn't want to traumatize my poor brother any further. It was pretty amazing though. You've learned some new moves. I couldn't refrain from remarking as I pulled him into a loose hug. Yeah, well, you live in hell for 10 years. You're bound to pick up on some stuff, he said comfortably. Didn't even have to explain what to touch or nothing. Oh, shut up, he grumbled, fondly batting at the hand I'd buried in his hair, but ending up just bringing it down to interlace our fingers instead. Damn, but I'm happy right now. Were you hoping this would happen when you first got my text? I inquired. I don't know, I guess I was always hoping. He gave a deep, rumbling sigh. Here's the thing, he began, sounding almost dejected. I'm pathetic like that. I never could forget about you. I tried, believe me. It's not exactly good for your self-esteem when you wake up one day and realize you're in your 30s and still carry a torch for your first ever girlfriend. But when you told me to come, I didn't even think twice about it. See, when you dangle the chance of being with you anywhere within reach of me, I'll always come running. He took a long breath, closing his eyes. I love you. Either I fell for you again, or I never actually stopped. I honestly can't tell, but I do love you, and I don't need you to say it back. I just like the way you've been looking at me, and I want to keep that in my life. I know you care about me. That's enough. I felt like I'd already heard him say all those things, or maybe I'd simply known. I love you too, I murmured, heart thumping. I'd never felt this bare in my life. What? He sounded genuinely taken aback, so much so that I couldn't help but turn red. What do you mean, what? I muttered into the pillow I'd buried the side of my face against. Jacek laughed out loud. I'm sorry. I really did not expect you'd ever. I kind of felt like you did, but hearing it is something else. Wow. Could you say it again? Please. I scoffed, turning further to hide my burning cheeks. I love you. Louder? Come on, for me. I love you. Didn't quite hear you there. You're a smug-ass bastard, aren't you? I hissed. Hard not to be right now. You're holding me. You need to leave, I blurted out, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop myself. His face fell. What? You need to go. I can't have you around when Nick comes back. But I want to help you. Exactly. I pushed myself up into a sitting position. You want to stay in Nick's service, right? You can't stand by me this firmly if you want to keep your job. You've built this entire career with him. You become so powerful you don't want to lose that, do you? You made this whole other life for yourself. But it's not good enough. It's not good enough if you're not in it. You'd miss it though, wouldn't you? This isn't just something you were born into and had to do. This is something you really worked to achieve by whatever grim means necessary. I don't want to be responsible for you losing that. And Lord knows what Nick would do when you'd quit. He's bound to fly into a frenzy. I sputtered, stumbling over my words. Believe me, I don't want you to go. We locked eyes, his inkwell gaze boring into mine. This doesn't mean we can be together. We can work something out for sure, but not with the devil breathing down my neck. Because he's gonna show up here, and then hell think you've turned on him, and it'll just add to the fuel. I gotta deal with him alone. He's not gonna kill me. Jacek, I've got a plan. Or rather, we do. We? I've gained an ally. I smiled as I heard a voice in the back of my head coo reassuringly. I'm going to be okay. Hell, you know what you're asking of me here, right? How am I supposed to do this? Just trust me. It's gonna work out. I swear. I gently rested my palm on his chest. His pale, wide, entirely whole chest. Oh my God, I breathed. Jacek's chin hit his chest as he looked down. His hand flew to his heart, the beating tangible beneath the skin. I jumped to my feet, still butt naked, and grabbed the first item of clothing I could find, Jacek's discarded black sweater. I pulled it on and raised my arms, staring at the sleeves in shock and astonishment. The miller burst out laughing, a joyful, incredulous laugh, watching as I twirled in front of the closet mirror. Okay, give it back then, he panted. I'm heading out. and I'll stay away 2 days. No longer, because you're not getting rid of me this time. Deal, I said softly, turning to face him. Tell Nick to get up here. I'm ready to see him. I accompanied J-Sec outside. As we stepped onto the porch, he suddenly began to pull his jacket off and removed it again. Now only in his undershirt, he held the black sweater had returned to him mere minutes ago, out to me, a hopeful smile on his lips. I grabbed it and put it on over my dress. It smelled of smoke, a very faint, subtle cologne, and strangely enough, French fries. The warmth of his skin still clung to the fabric. Better than flowers, I told him with a smile. He laughed quietly, then turned over his shoulder and gave me a wave before disappearing in a burst of flames. I looked out at the scorched, molten valley he'd left in the snow for a short while before going back inside. The sound of the shower running told me that my brother had found his way out of bed at last. I sank down on the living room sofa, waiting for him to finally grace me with his presence. So you got back with him? His voice rang out from behind me. Called it. I craned my neck to look back at him. Can you read my mind, or is telling when two people hooked up just like an instinct of yours? Not so much an instinct as you two thinking you're a lot quieter than you actually are. Oh, sorry. It's cool. If 16-year-old CAs could handle it, 30-year-old CAs will too. He gave me a cheesy grin. With a minimal amount of therapy, he plopped down beside me, only for his jaw to drop. You're wearing something else. Your curse. Is it gone? I guess so, I muttered, folding my hands in my lap. You don't sound so thrilled. I gave a bitter chuckle. Funny thing is, I think I'm gonna miss wearing wedding gowns. They make me feel so pretty. Plus, I've really gotten used to them, and they really don't hold me back like they used to. I don't want to take a swim in one again, but, you know. Casimir shrugged. You ask me, you don't need an excuse to wear those things. Just do it. Whatever floats your boat. Folks are gonna think I'm weird. They do that already. We sat in silence for a moment before I placed my arm around his shoulder and pulled him close. After staying close for a little while, I let go of my brother, straightened up, and told him to leave. His reaction wasn't all that different from J6. Have you gone crazy? He sputtered. And not leaving you alone out here. You want to go up against Nick on your own? You got a death wish or something? I won't be on my own. I'll be okay. I know I will. And I only want you to leave for a little while, just like a day or so. I'll text you as soon as everything is over, I promise. You can be serious. Please, Casimir. Don't do that. Don't big sister me. Look at it this way. I'm about to have a difficult discussion, and Nick is easily aggravated, and he's got a huge hard-on for you anyways. He's gonna get angry as shit, and he's gonna want to hurt me. Well, he won't be able to, but if you're around, he'll have the perfect guy to take it out on, and I don't want it to come to that. My brother's gaze darkened, handsome features derailing in somber comprehension. I'm scared, he said softly. I know, me too. He grabbed my hand, long fingers curling around mine. Phi. I swallowed the lump in my throat. My tongue felt like sandpaper scraping the roof of my mouth. I love you, and I'm so fucking glad you're my brother. In a heartbeat, Casimir's arms were around me, squeezing me so hard I let out a strangled yelp. Listen, you gotta promise you'll be okay. If not, I'm just gonna freak, and I'll tear everything apart, which will suck, because I'm not really the berserk type, but you're the best thing in my life, my best anything. He reluctantly let go of me, returning upstairs to change into something warmer before heading out. I watched from my window as he got into his car and slowly drove off the property, tires leaving sharp tracks in the snow. I was left alone, entirely alone. For the first time in what seemed like ages, this large old house was completely empty except for me. All I could do now was wait. My body was vibrating with nervous energy. I couldn't sit still for even a moment. I pulled off the sweater, changed into another poofier wedding dress just for the hell of it, then put the sweater back on, then took it off again. I went to feed Jeanette and Licorice. Both animals were hanging out in the stables and seemingly getting along just fine. Not much of a surprise, considering I'd always thought that hard-headed mule must have some relation to the devil. The dog allowed me to give it a scratch, and I assured him that his master would be back this time. Out of pure boredom and anxiety, I proceeded to clean every surface I could find in my home. When I couldn't think of anything else to do, I simply sat down again and started writing. The next time I looked up, my heart sank. It was entirely dark outside. Beyond my windows, everything was pitch black. I quickly turned on all the lights in the living room. A glance at my phone told me it was 2 in the afternoon. It's true that night sets in quickly here in the winter months. But this was impossible. The familiar feeling of fear creeping into my chest and pooling in my stomach like a cold, thick liquid had my thoughts racing. I wiped my suddenly sweat-laced palms on my skirt as I made my way from window to window, peering out of each one in the hopes of maybe spotting at least a single ray of light. No such luck, of course. This was how Nick was going to play, wasn't it? I had only gotten small glimpses of his mind-bending abilities, but it suited him well enough. I told myself that he was only trying to scare me again. That was correct, obviously. He had been trying to intimidate me every chance he'd gotten thus far, but it was difficult not to let it get to me when he was really bringing out the big guns now. "Come out already," I shouted into the empty hallway. No response. My temples were throbbing. "Stop fucking with me." I barked at the silence. Still nothing. Of course. Desperate, I willed my mind to calm, only for the pang of fright to flare up again when an unnerving sound reached my ears. Scratching. Nails on a chalkboard? No. Metal on glass? It was a grating, screeching noise that caused the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up. It mixed with the howls of sudden violent gusts of wind, fiercer than any I'd ever heard before. They rattled the window frames, sweeping along the walls of the house and pushing down on the roof, eliciting wooden groans and creaks. I jumped, barely able to stifle a sharp scream when I heard several doors slam upstairs. "Bastard," I cried out, hoping for the fury to mask the terror in my voice. "Where are you?" I ran to grab onto the handle of the living room door just as it was about to fly open and bang shut as well. It shook in my grip, trembling so strongly I had to yank my hand away. "I thought you wanted to talk this out like adults. What even made me assume that in the first place?" Ignoring the frantic pounding of my heart, I rushed up the stairs, bursting into each room, checking if by any chance he was lurking in some unlit corner. My search yielded no results. The cacophony of noises continued, only picking up in volume, and I staggered back downstairs, hands covering my ears. I had to get out. I needed air. I needed to see if this was real, or if the darkness was only in my head. I ran to tear open the front door, realizing in horror that it didn't budge. My arms kept frantically pulling at it, as if they were entities separate from myself. By some miracle, the door finally responded to my force, flying open and sending me staggering back. I tripped over my own feet, gracelessly falling onto my butt as I stared at the gaping black maw that had materialized before me. There was nothing there. It was not just the absence of light, it was the absence of everything. And from this nothingness, a familiar figure leapt out. The hellhound was upon me before I managed to get back up. I shrieked, instantly raising my hands over my head to shield my face and throat from his enormous snout. "Licorice!" I called his name in a vain attempt to get through to him. He wasn't himself, gone was the reluctantly obedient, lazily docile dog I'd come to know. His fiery eyes made for a disheartening reminder of whom he truly was in servitude of. I should have told Jacek to take him along. This senseless thought flashed through my mind as I pushed myself to my feet, shoving the dog off of me in a feat of strength that only a burst of adrenaline could explain. I threw myself against the huge animal's flank, shoving him back into the direction of the open doorway. The sound of his claws scraping across the floor made me wince. He was far too heavy. I barely got him to move 2 or 3 feet when his head whipped around and struck me, bashing right into my chest. I folded like an umbrella, every bit of air leaving my body in a heavy gasp as I hit the ground. Licorice's snout came dangerously close to my neck once more, gigantic teeth bared and glinting in the dim light. Specks of slobber landed on my cheeks as the hound's hot breath hit my skin. His jaws opened wider and wider, tongue lolling out, every inhale accompanied by a low growl. All of a sudden, a familiar voice in the back of my head piped up. "You're terrified again. Why? Is it the dog?" Compelled by an unseen force, I slowly reached my hand up and placed it behind one of Licorice's large ears, fingers digging into the short black fur, scratching gentle circles. The poor creature does not know what it's doing. It cannot help itself. The evening redness whispered to me, but we can. The dog had stopped mid-motion, mouth closing. His eyes had lost some of their frenzy, the snarl on his face softening. It was only moved to terrorize you. It will not harm you. His only task is to weaken your mind. I looked up at the hand caressing the hellhound, fresh tears still blurring my vision, still in utter disbelief. I watched as Licorice straightened up, sniffing my hand and giving it a short lick before turning around to trot back into the darkness. I pushed myself up. Holy shit. Thank you so much. I said the words out loud, but the sleeper appeared to hear them nevertheless. There is much to be accomplished with a conduit such as yourself. The entity's tone somehow sounded mirthful, relaxed, confident. Calm yourself. The creature with the big teeth is gone. Everything else is only a dream. It's not real. No, he is running images through your mind. I can keep him out, if you let me. All you need to do is calm yourself and let me in. But you're in already. Deeper. You're sure we can make it? Trust me. Pleasure. Warmth. Like someone was petting me from the inside. A soft breath of relief escaped my lips. I wasn't alone. It felt good not to be by myself. You have absolutely no reason to be afraid, my dearest. Sit. Just sit and be ready for what's to come. I moved over to the armchair, sinking down as though my knees were giving in. Don't fear. Whatever the sleeper was doing, it worked. My breathing slowed and my pulse stopped thrumming in my ears. You will not die. I crossed my legs and folded my hands in my lap. You will not falter. I squared my shoulders and lifted my head. A smile began to unfurl on my lips as the chaos around me seemed to fade away, dissolving into silence at last. Whenever you're ready, Nick. I sat and waited, legs crossed, back straight, eyes ahead. If someone would have taken a photo of me at that moment, it would have been good, just saying. Yes, my hair was disheveled, and there was the tiniest bit of blood trickling from the back of my head, but despite the dread and the nerves, I was feeling prepared. I couldn't hear the storm and the scratching anymore. All that was left was a tense kind of silence, the calm before the storm, and then all of a sudden the storm materialized right in front of me, his form as per usual, that of a middle-aged man in sweatpants. His bare feet kicked up on the small TV table and his arms crossed behind his head. He leaned back on the sofa, grinning at me with brazen self-evidence, eyes twinkling. Miss Novak, why is it that every time we meet, you have to terrorize me in some unforeseen way? Doesn't that make things more interesting? For you or for me? He let out a soft chuckle before looking around.
Hey, where's the company?
I sent them both away for this. No, so the kids are with the sitter and you got me alone. That what you're saying? I grunted. So, little forced bride finally ready to talk shop. Where is the sleeper? He inquired, leaning forward on his knees. Firstly, let's just establish a couple things. You only ever asked me for its location, not to hand it over or anything. So if I just tell you where to find it, and that's all, then you won't retract the protection your whole default grants the woods. Sure. Okay, I said slowly. Seeing as we can't avoid this conversation any longer, the sleeper used to rest beneath the meadow with the red flowers on it, in the dead body of an ancestor of mine. Good girl. Then let me... Wait, did you say used to? I smiled thinly. Despite the relative calm I'd found myself in before, I was getting a little, let's call it itchy. It's not there anymore. I knew what you would do with it because, you told me, and I know it would turn the tide. It would grant you power even over my corner of the world, if you would even get so far. The sleeper is a powerful entity, and it would defend itself. It would lay this place to ashes. I took a deep breath, fixing him with a stare, so I removed it. Excuse me. Nick's smile had frozen over on his face. The expression was even more affected and unsettlingly fake than all the ones I'd seen him wear before. I removed it. It's inside of me now. Silence. For a moment all the devil did was hold my gaze. His mouth had turned into a thin line. This was the first time I'd seen his features derailing. Wow, I thought, I actually got him to shut up for once. Telling him was the easy part. The soothing voice in the back of my head mumbled. Inside of you? Nick echoed. Inside of you. They make for a very pleasant roommate, body mate. That sounded dirty. Despite himself, Nick let out a little chuckle. Anyways, we're both pretty happy about the arrangement, so I'm not going to give it to you. So there's something you've probably said to both my servant and me, Nick remarked. This time I stifled a giggle. Not going to lie to you, Fiona, this is a bit of a shock and an inconvenience. I should probably tell you though, it doesn't change my plans, he went on. It's too bad that it has to be like this, because honestly, he tipped his head back and thought, actually no, I wouldn't say I like you, but I guess I don't mind you. I wouldn't have minded having you downstairs someday either. Like I said, if a woman such as yourself were to have Hetman's children, don't finish that sentence. Anyways, I'd rather deal with the fallout with Jasek than pass up the opportunity to feed on your sleeper. And if that means I have to pry it out of you, well then, so be it. You do know that killing me won't solve anything? The redness spent hundreds of years inhabiting a preserved dead body of its choosing. So even if I were to die, that doesn't mean it would just float right into your mouth. The devil grinned widely. Then let's find out how big the smallest piece of you it could possibly survive in would have to be. I forced my face to remain impassive, but my voice broke midway through the sentence I next spoke, causing me to repeat myself. And what would you do if I won? Excuse me. If you'd attack me and I'd end up overpowering you and winning the fight, what would you do? I asked. Nick let out a soft laugh. I think we'd best cross that bridge if and when we get to it. Let's take this outside, I suggested, rising to my feet and gesturing at the front door. The beast chuckled to himself but followed nevertheless, as I walked over and opened it for him. The same black maw greeted the two of us, the absence of all light and sound awaiting at my doorstep. But it wasn't real. Nick was messing with my brain again. Have no fear, the evening redness whispered to me, and for a brief moment, I saw a glimpse of the real outside world, the sky, the snow, the tree line, before it changed back to that sinister, sense-numbing darkness. After you, Nick invited. I took a deep breath and stepped outside. I heard the door fall shut behind my back. I was relieved to feel the soft ground beneath my feet, the familiar crunch accompanying each of my steps. It really was all in my head. Still, being stripped of one's perception of reality is nothing short of disturbing, so I'd be lying if I said it had no effect on me. Turning around, I couldn't see Nick anywhere. He was effectively hiding himself, making use of my impaired vision. He'd really gotten up close and personal with that mind of mine. I felt like he was running his slippery fingers directly through my head, touching my skull from the inside. Please, I reached out to the sleeper. You can't leave me hanging now. I don't intend to. How far are you willing to let me in? However far it takes. And then, as if a switch had been flipped, the world was fully illuminated again. I could see everything. Myself, the house, the sauna, the meadow, and Nick, standing a few feet away from me, with a scowl on his face. You can stop trying, I told him. You're not alone, it's not going to be that easy. Then just let it be known that you chose to do this the hard way. With that, he threw his head back, a gash suddenly splitting his throat. Dark liquid came splattering out, and I backed off in shock, only to realize that it wasn't a wound at all. It was an opening, a dark gap with the rest of his human body flailing beneath it, like it was no more than a rag doll, a romper made of skin being discarded as something else climbed out from inside of it. The legs came first. One by one, 16 long, slender, ink-black limbs pushed themselves out of the suit of flesh, producing a wet, squelching noise as they unfolded, displaying far too many unnaturally bending joints. They ended in cloven hooves, each of them coming down on the ground with a stomp, whirling up the pristine, powdery snow. Then the rest of the body emerged. It looked kind of like a horse or a goat, small in comparison to its enormous leg span. It didn't really have a head, just 3 large round eyes sitting in the middle of its misshapen torso. I wanted to puke. I wanted to scream and squeeze my eyes shut, hide my face in my hands. But I did none of those things. I didn't turn away. I stood upright, rooted to the spot, my hands clenched into trembling fists at my sides. The thing was towering above me, growing ever taller as it stretched to its full height, its spindly legs straightening. I had to crane my neck to continue looking up at it. Granted, there may have been more in the grand scheme of things, but at that moment I was certain that this was the most nightmarish thing I'd ever seen. My entire body, every last instinct, all my good senses were screaming at me to run. Every fiber of my being was trembling in fear of this entity, this living, breathing terror. Part of me wanted to throw myself at its feet, to offer up anything and everything, and to beg for forgiveness just so I'd be rid of this sight, but I didn't. I stayed on my feet, eyes trained on Nick's new form, gritting my teeth so hard I was afraid they'd splinter. I didn't allow myself to tremble. I didn't allow myself to weep. I forced my mind to stop racing, willed my thoughts into order. Are you there? I asked the sleeper. I'm here. I need to best him now. It's time. Are you ready? I'm at your command, it said softly. You are my conduit, my channel, and my mistress. Make use of me as you see fit. I took an uncertain step forward, stumbling as if prodded by an aggressively encouraging parent standing behind me. How? I found myself growing desperate, my heart pounding wildly as I tried to figure out what to do. Just do it. Do what you must. Whatever you need. Trust yourself. Trust us. I raised my head, biting my lip as my gaze found the one of the 16-legged horror looming overhead. Nick's 3 eyes focused on me, and even in the beyond surreal form he was in, I thought I could see that familiar, mocking glint in his stare. I began to walk. Step by step, I moved towards him. One of his hooves lifted and came down upon me, and I dodged only at the very last second. The movement felt effortless. I don't even remember deciding to do it, or feeling alarmed by the threat of the impact. It all just kind of happened. You shall not fear. I picked up my pace, starting to run towards the nearest leg. You will not fall. I jumped. I jumped farther and higher than I ever had before, adrenaline rushing through my body, adrenaline in red. You will not fail. Before Nick could react, I had already thrown my arms around the limb, fingers digging into the flesh with a strength I was sure a previous version of myself could never have mustered. The leg felt unlike anything I'd felt before. It was like a continuous squirming cramp of muscles beneath the pitch-black fur, wriggling beneath my touch, as though every inch of it was alive and had a mind of its own. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Like an athlete scaling a mountain, I began to pull myself up. I climbed the giant's leg at a steady pace, clinging on despite his attempts to shake me off, despite the frantic stomps, the furious growls and tremors. Finally, I pulled myself onto the round torso. It made me feel like I was standing on a platform, almost as high up as the treetops. Nick began to thrash around more fiercely, then almost dancing on the spot as he attempted to buck me off. I felt like a rodeo clown, holding onto his stretchy, hairy skin like the horn on a saddle. What are you even doing? The devil's voice came from nowhere in particular. He had no mouth in his current form, but he wasn't speaking to me from inside my head either. His voice was rolling across the meadow like a thunderclap. I dragged myself towards his uppermost eye, hanging my head to glare down into it from above. The wind was whipping my lace-covered back, causing me to flatten my body against that of the beast. I felt distinctly reminded of the position I was in when I peered at him hiding under my bed. Get off, you stupid bye. Before he could finish his sentence, I plunged both my hands into the glazed surface of his eye. The squishy flesh gave way immediately, and I felt warm, thick liquid swirling around my fingers. I had no idea what this form of his was made up of, but it was corporeal enough to be injured, and when Nick's agonized, bellowing shriek echoed across the expanse of the grassy plain, I knew that I had done just that. I pulled my hands back out with as much force as I could muster, drawing another cry from the devil. But as soon as I sat back, he reared up again, this time managing to throw me off. I was sent flying through the air, and before I knew it, I was already falling, nearing the ground in a flurry of white tulle as my skirt fluttered around me, inflating like a balloon. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for a collision I was sure I wouldn't survive, only to find that it never came. Instead, the snow beneath seemed to catch my fall like a soft, silky net. You will not fall. I rose to my feet. Nick's form had begun to twist and warp, his legs twitching like those of a dying insect. His entire body seemed to collapse into a heap of vibrating dark matter, a heap of half-fleshy, half-nebulous mass. Go on. Bring an end to this nonsense. I took a deep, cleansing breath, steadying myself as I proceeded towards him. He can't fully materialize anymore. You did something strange when I stuck my hands into his eye, didn't you? The sleeper sounded pleased with the question. Something effective. Something you made possible. Thank you. Old Nick, I called out. Somehow I felt his attention on me, and then I realized it. It wasn't just that he couldn't hold a form anymore. He couldn't move, couldn't leave. I want to talk. Are you listening? What have you done to me? He pressed out, somehow still able to speak. He didn't sound anything like himself though. Honestly, no idea, but you're trapped. Do you understand? You can't get away from here. You can't leave this place. Why? Because this ground is not yours to command. Because you're weak here, and now you're hurt. And most importantly, because I won't let you, I responded. We won't let you. So that's your grand plan. Keep me here forever? You can't do that. For long enough at least to make you really fucking uncomfortable. Now we can talk about this. It doesn't need to be like this, but goddamn if I'm not gonna deliver. If you want to play it like this, then so am I. I will keep you on my land for as long as I possibly can, and we're gonna find out just how many days or weeks or months or years that'll be. But remember, this is my land, my home. Yours is all the way down in hell, and who knows if there won't be someone else taking on your responsibilities while you're away." I allowed a smile to creep up on my face. It was only a teensy bit forced too. I'm just gonna get comfortable. For a beat, he stayed silent. Then, "What do you want?" "I want the Hulda folk to stay on my side. I want you to forget about every last issue you have with me. You'll stop terrorizing me. Stop appearing around the house or in my room, and you'll stop creeping on my brother, Casimir. That is, you can do whatever you want with Gem, and you won't try to get the evening redness. I won't let you consume it, and you'll never have power over this place. Neither will anyone else. These are my woods. Mine." "Understood," he wheezed as the sleeper and I tightened our grip on his essence. "Oh, and your valet, he's mine. I mean, if he wants to be, don't even think about grounding him or doing anything to keep him away from me. You don't want him to stay here full time and attend you. That's not a relationship. That's a hostage situation. He wants to work for you. He can do whatever. I don't care. But whatever beef we got, don't take it out on him. And don't use it against me ever again. Deal." "Fair enough. You agree then?" Yes, for fuck's sake," he spat. "And don't even care to try and find like a loophole here or whatever. Don't come after me. Don't ever mess with me again." "I won't." He sounded angrier than I'd ever heard. "I got your word on that." A heavy sigh. "Then you do." My heartbeat slowed considerably. "Let him go?" the redness inquired. "Let him go," I confirmed. Nick's form immediately shrank into the human body I'd grown accustomed to. His skin was red again, streaked golden. As he was lying on the ground, he bore a strange hint of unearthly grace. He pushed himself up on his arm, tired eyes glaring up at me in pure angry frustration. It was a look I knew well though. I'd seen a close approximation of it nearly every time I'd looked in the mirror these last couple nights. I smiled thinly at him. "Get out of here, and don't come back. Believe me, I won't," he hissed. Not another word left his lips before he sank down into the ground, disappearing right before my eyes. I let go of the deepest sigh in history. I went back inside and sank right into the cushions of my couch. "If you want, you can go back to sleep now," I told Red. "He'd be very grateful for that. Call upon me any time and I will wake." "I'll remember that. Thank you." My head felt empty and free and light, almost like I was drunk on relief. Or maybe it was merely the fatigue. I pulled out my phone and texted CAs. "Bro, come back. I miss you." "Yup, that many os?" So that was embarrassing enough. I don't really know what drove me. You don't even want to know what I texted JSEC. I proceeded to drag myself upstairs and draw a bath, which I hopped into without further ado. After soaking for a blissful hour, I dried off and put a fresh, pristine white gown on. I returned downstairs, laid down on the sofa, and fell asleep. I'm unsure how long I was out for, but when I woke up I found Ciez nestled against my shoulder and JSEC's head resting in the fluffy folds of my skirt. I didn't even hear them come in, and they're out cold. All of this is still so odd to me. This started out as nothing but a rant about wannabe internet cryptid hunters, and now we're, well, here. It's hard to believe. And what's even stranger is that I'm happier than I've been in a very long time. I'm really grateful for all the support. There's still a lot that needs straightening out here. There's a creature out there that pretended to be an angel to fuck with me and my estate, and they're sure as shit not gonna get away with it. The sleeper also needs some more gentle love and care. I've got a couple ideas about our arrangement that I want to pitch to them, but for now I'm just glad I get to sleep. Finally. Guess I'll see you guys soon. Don't look at the mirror. I woke up with a cold sweat. I looked at the clock that was placed on my nightstand, 3:03 a.m. The air in my room felt heavier than usual, cold, almost damp, like the windows had been left open to the night. But they hadn't. I was sure of it. The silence around me was thick and unnatural, as if the world outside had paused. I felt a dryness in my throat, so I got up to grab a glass of water. Still half asleep, I stumbled my way forward, blindly tracing the wall with my fingertips, searching for the light switch. The hallway beyond my door felt impossibly dark, like it wasn't just night, but something else was pressing in from the edges. I finally found the switch and flicked it on. The sudden light stung my eyes, forcing them shut for a moment. When I opened them again, I scanned the room, squinting past the afterimage still lingering in my vision. My room looked untouched. Normal. At first glance. Too normal. Then my gaze drifted upward, and my blood ran cold. There was a note taped to the ceiling, right above where I'd been sleeping. The paper was slightly wrinkled, stained in one corner. Its presence alone was enough to make my skin crawl. On it, in jagged, uneven handwriting, were 5 simple words. Don't look at the mirror. I froze. My breath caught in my chest. I didn't write that. I know I didn't. And I live alone. No one else has a key to my place. No one should have been able to get in. The paper seemed to hum with warning. A part of me wanted to tear it down and pretend I'd never seen it, but I couldn't move. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind spinning in quiet panic. Maybe it was a prank? A dream? I rubbed my eyes hard, heart pounding. Still there. It hadn't changed. It hadn't disappeared. It just waited. I swallowed hard. He's hello. I called out, my voice cracking in the heavy silence. Nothing. I wasn't sure what I expected to happen. It's not like anyone would suddenly appear. And yet the silence after that single word felt wrong, like it had swallowed the sound too fast, like something was listening. The words echoed over and over in my head. Don't look at the mirror. Don't look. Don't. I turned my head anyway. There it was, my makeup table tucked into the corner of the room, its mirror catching the light. At first, all I saw was my reflection, wide eyes, pale skin, mouth slightly open in fear. But then I saw it writing, smeared across the glass, in thick, red strokes that looked fresh, like they were still wet. You shouldn't have looked. The letters dripped slowly, almost deliberately, as though something unseen had only just finished writing them. I stepped back, bumping into my nightstand. My knees felt weak. Then I heard it. The doorknob. It rattled once, soft but sharp enough to freeze my blood. Then again, more insistent, like someone was jiggling it, testing it, or worse, trying to come in. I stared at the mirror. The writing had begun to blur, but behind the smears, in the corner of the reflection, something was standing by the door, and it was waiting. I have a bug problem. Being an artist is a difficult journey in a world filled with them. Everyone is an artist in their own way. Writers translate the visceral emotions of people and concepts into meager language, a primitive tool that could never capture true feelings, yet they strive and reach closer every day. Architects design beautiful and logical cities, complicated designs worth every penny. Construction workers break their bodies to develop those cities and do it so efficiently it can be finished in just days. Artistry stems from a flow state, the state of being withdrawn from the outside world, and the only thing inside is the work to be done. You feel every word, you picture every design, you hammer every nail, all the while your mind is empty. It flows from you into the world as the ultimate form of expression, straight from the soul. So, when everyone is an artist, the field becomes impacted by the weight of society. For every businessman there are 20 or more musicians. I am one of the lucky few to have been granted the right by the public to ascertain a career of it. It wasn't all merit, I admit. Connections are very important in NYC, but everyone I play for only has the highest praises for me. With my newfound fortune from playing the piano and selling out shows, I bought myself a personal one, and it came with a beautiful apartment at the top of a building in the heart of artistry, here in NY. I have never seen anything like it. A gorgeous and well-tuned, well-taken care of machine, ready to go at the drop of a hat, included with my own place to call home. It was a miracle, something given by the universe itself to congratulate me in my life's work. The artist of the strings pulling together our universe themselves have beckoned me to live here. A panoramic view of gray monoliths stretching out, lighting up a dark sky with their vibrant life and no sound to accompany it. A marble open floor plan with plenty of space to accommodate at least 4 people comfortably. My new home. There is a problem with my God-given gift though. There are bugs in my walls. I don't know the kind, but they act strange. They are alive in ways that make me think they're conscious. I only started suspecting them a month after moving in, when I began to hear scratching following me into every room I entered. I thought there may have been a structural problem, but the builders I called to inspect my apartment didn't find any large-scale issues with the integrity of it, just some missing caulk here, a pipe needing to be replaced there. The scratching continued. It would follow me into the bedroom and slowly pulsate in waves of stress that made it impossible to sleep. One time when I woke up from a feverish dream, I stared at the ceiling and I swear I saw it bulge and bend, like a baby turning over in his mother's womb. It would tick and turn like a metronome, slow and methodical, until I drifted away. I couldn't stand being in the apartment anymore, and so I called pest control to help me. The noises were driving me mad. They looked through every nook and cranny but didn't find evidence of creatures living in my walls. "Probably the wind," the exterminator said. I admit I yelled at the man and forced him out of my house. "How could the wind bend my walls? How could it scratch all night and know where I'm at?" I said. The man shrugged and said something about sounding like a personal problem. Sounded like I needed to see a doctor. But I am not crazy. I know crazy as it has been bred into family members I grew up with who had to get institutionalized. I know the signs and I know what is real. I was defeated that night. Slowly drinking myself into a stupor, I opened up the grand piano for the first time and played something inspired by my world. The moon bore a full face, scowling down at all of humanity below me. It had no one to accompany it that night, as all its younger brothers and sisters had been wiped out by the artificial light of the people, light that killed all of the moon's family. Our scourge on the sky, it bore a face of sadness, of regret. Thinking of all of his lost family, I played something to accompany his grief, his loneliness, his sadness, the great sonata dedicated to him by Beethoven. Every note rang true through my hands and body. The vibrations added warmth to the air, and melancholy miasma spread in a gaseous form through every crack in the doors and filled the hallways with blue notes of ancient sadness. The moon lowered in the sky in appreciation, getting closer to hear better. In my flow, I thought of a man I met years ago, before I was ever famous, and before anyone but my mother and father heard my songs. We were at a bar listening to some slow blues of a local band. "Have you ever thought of being an artist?" the man said. I turned in my stool and looked at him in confusion, as I never met him before. He had striking red and curly hair, skin like porcelain in aquamarine pools sitting in sharp but sad eyes. Eyes that told a story of certain betrayal that intrigued me enough to entertain him. I shifted my body uncomfortably, but his energy gave off a welcoming and loving presence. Something about him made me want to tell him the truth. It's all I ever dreamed of. He smiled a wide grin that filled me with warmth. I remember that night as if it were etched in time, every word a part of a dance between fate and desire. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locked onto his, as if daring the secret inside me to reveal itself. You see, I began hesitantly, feeling both compelled and terrified by the pull of his oceanic gaze. I've always believed that art was a born gift, a fire waiting to spark. His smile grew, slow and knowing. "Do you think that spark is something given by inheritance? Or something beyond comprehension, something otherworldly?" he asked, his voice a gentle purr that seemed to echo off the smoky walls. The soulful notes from the blues band draped around us like an intimate shroud. I laughed nervously, unsure if I was prepared for what lay beneath his words. "Are you suggesting some kind of magic?" "Not magic, per se," he replied, leaning closer so that the light caught the glint of something unspoken in his aquamarine eyes. He took a sip of his drink. "A pact, perhaps. A covenant that can turn a whisper of talent into a roaring blaze. Something you promise to yourself. But as with the laws of nature, every light casts a shadow. A price paid for every good deed or wish granted." The chill in his tone sent shivers down my spine. My heart hammered with the anticipation of both hope and dread. "And what price would that be?" I asked softly, every instinct screaming that the answer might shatter my dreams. His eyes darkened for a moment, sorrow mingling with mischief. "Let's make up a hypothetical. Say I were to give you your dreams, but you must be cursed, like a shadow, in the direct magnitude of your wish." I felt the weight of his words deep within me, like a promise too tantalizing. "So if I accept your offer, I'll become renowned, destined to have all I ever dreamed of?" I murmured, unable to tear my gaze away. He chuckled, a sound both musical and menacing as he brushed a stray curl away from his ghostly face. "Renowned, yes, but also entwined with the very darkness that feeds on brilliance." I felt a moment of uncertain clarity, the allure of a destiny fulfilled, the image of my songs reaching countless souls. It was impossible to ignore. Yet in the depths of his eyes I sensed the truth. Nothing in this world came without consequence. After a long silent beat that seemed to stretch into eternity, I whispered, "I understand," and closed my tab. A slow smirk crept across his lips, as if both victory and melancholy graced his handsome features. While adventuring through my mind palace with the sweet notes of Moonlight Sonata, I noticed a strange reverberance that shouldn't have been there. It was a slow scratching. I slowed my pace. It turned to a beat inside the wall, a thump, like a heartbeat that followed the rhythm of the music. I slammed my hands on the keys. You bastard, you're fucking with me. Then I hatched a plot. I scooted away from my seat and gently placed a record on my turntable. It started toward the middle of an interpretation of Caprice. No. 13. Transitioning into variations op. 15. I turned the volume up and the speakers filled every room with noise, then followed the beating and scratching in the walls. The scratching had gotten worse. It wasn't just at night anymore. It whispered through the drywall in the middle of the day like 1,000 dry legs tapping in rhythm. Sometimes it hummed low and wet like breath rattling in a diseased throat. My fame had soared, but with it came the sound, and now it owned me. I stood in front of the wall where the sound pulsed loudest, chest heaving, fingertips twitching. I had tried everything, ignoring it, drowning it out, even sleeping in hotels, but it always found me, always. The wall was cold and stark white, but the area where the scratching was happening had veins of mold creeping like rot through the seams of drywall. I pressed my ear to it. The sound stopped. Then, clear as anything, I heard it. Play for us. I snapped. With a strangled grunt, I drove the claw's end of a hammer into the drywall. Plaster exploded like bone dust. A hollow groan escaped the wall, and something beneath the surface shuddered. I didn't care. I kept going. Each strike sent shocks up my arm. My knuckles split open as I ripped away chunks with my bare hands. Blood smeared across the wall like paint. The deeper I went, the warmer it got. The space behind the drywall wasn't empty. It breathed. It exhaled a thick, sticky heat that smelled of old blood and wilted flowers left too long in stagnant water. Behind the drywall, I found something fleshy. Not wood, not insulation. Flesh. I stared, breath catching in my throat. Veins, black and pulsing, ran in lattices across a pinkish membrane. It twitched when I touched it. My fingers sunk slightly into it like wet dough. Beneath my skin, I felt the vibration, like 1,000 whispers trapped in a closed mouth, begging to be heard. I tore at it. My nails bent back as I clawed through the pulsing meat. It screamed, not in sound, but in my skull. Sharp, shrill frequencies stabbed my mind as hot, translucent fluid spilled down my arms. It smelled like vinegar and spoiled milk. Behind the membrane was a hollow, round chamber. Nestled inside, alive and writhing, was a mass of black, silky threads that moved like hair in water. They twined around tiny mouths, blinking eyes, fragments of instruments, torn pages of scores. My scores, my handwriting. They were feeding on them. On me. I fell backwards, sobbing slick with gore as the threads reached outward toward the moonlight. And in my mind, I heard him again. Entwined with the very darkness that feeds on brilliance. I am shuttered in my room and haven't left for days. I don't want to see the thing in my walls anymore, peering out at me with sickly flesh. The scratching is getting louder, and it's whispering to me, begging me to play music. My friend and I went to the abandoned Westfield mall. What we found was horrific. I'm shaking as I type this. I don't know if this is a warning or a confession, but either way, I have to tell someone. Back on March 19th, 2007, me and my buddy Chris broke into Westfield Mall, you know, the one abandoned for almost 30 years now. It was this massive shopping complex that shut down after some freak accident no one talks about. It just rotted there, half sunken into the earth like some ancient ruin. We weren't exactly brave, just stupid teenagers looking for some fun. Chris had heard that there was old cash registers still inside and maybe even some lost merchandise. You know, vintage stuff. We figured we'd sneak in with flashlights, grab some cool shit, and get out. The front doors were chained, and there were police tape and a sign that read, "Do not enter the premises," but someone had already broken a window on the side. The second we slipped in, the air changed. Thick, wet, it stank like mold and rust and weirdly rotten flesh or something older underneath. We clicked on our flashlights and started exploring. Storefronts were frozen in time. Mannequins still dressed in old 80s fashion, posters for long-dead bands. It was creepy, but not dangerous. At least, that's what we thought. About an hour in, we found the old food court. Half the ceiling had collapsed, and a tree was actually growing through the concrete. Chris was poking around when he found this weird staircase going down into the maintenance tunnels. I didn't want to go. Every part of my body screamed no. But Chris called me a little bitch and started walking down the tunnel. I couldn't leave him alone, so I followed. The tunnels were worse, cramped, flooded in parts, and animals that were severed and organs removed or bit off. The flashlight beams seemed swallowed by the dark. That's when we saw him. At first I thought it was a mannequin someone dragged down there. A man, pale as chalk, his skin almost glowing against the black, curly hair matted to his forehead. But from the waist down, there was nothing. It looked like someone had hacked his body clean off, just ragged flesh and bone. His arms, though, they were the worst part. They were long, grotesquely thin, bending wrong like a spider's legs. The fingers were sharp, tapering into cruel points, like a praying mantis claws. Chris gagged and stumbled back, making some noise, and that's when the lights on our flashlights flickered, and he moved. He didn't drag himself or walk himself like a normal person. It was more like he crawled across the floor, silent and fast, arms clicking and stabbing into the concrete to propel him forward. Only when the light flickered did he move, and when the beams came back fully, he froze, twisted in some new horrifying pose. I didn't know what to do. Chris ran. I turned to follow, but the lights flickered again, and I heard a wet crunching sound behind me. I didn't look. I couldn't. I ran blind, crashing into walls, sloshing through water, screaming. Somehow I found the staircase again and scrambled up into the mall. The windows at the far end were letting in the faint blue glow of dawn. I didn't stop running until I was outside. Chris never made it out. They found his body 2 days later, or what was left of it. It was like he had been hollowed out. No one believed my story. They said it was rats, or drugs, or trauma messing with my head. But I know what I saw. The thing in the mall, it's not human. It's not even alive. It's something older, something born from darkness, made of darkness, and it only moves when the lights die. Westfield Mall is still there, still abandoned. But every so often I hear about missing kids or homeless people who wander too close. And when the night falls heavy and the dark feels just a little too thick, I swear I can hear the sharp click of those spider arms waiting. And after 4 years from that incident, I went out again to the abandoned mall. However, the man was gone. I nearly threw up on what I saw. Chris' body was heavily mutilated, and there were writing on the walls that said something about the flesh child, and I continued. After 2 hours of nothing but finding 42 dead bodies and animals that were bitten, I was about to leave when all of a sudden I hear some crying, quiet at first, but it got louder and louder. I then went to check it out, and what I saw horrified me. There was a blood and flesh-like roots and a big sludge on the walls, and there was a torso of some sort of child, and it was crying again and again till it saw me, where it then screeched, and I swore I could have heard people who were damned to come here started screaming and begging for freedom and mercy. I ran out of there, and the police came in, but they came back and found nothing. If you're reading this, it's already too late for you. I was a vampire hunter. I lived by a simple rule: trust no one. But that was before I met her. Her name was Elena, a fellow hunter, my partner, my closest friend. And I thought the only one who could ever truly understand me. Together we were unstoppable. We had taken down dozens of vampires, each kill making us stronger, more precise, more ruthless. But tonight was different. The wind howled outside, the kind of wind that chills you down to your very bones. The moon hung low in the sky, full and heavy, casting long stretching shadows across the forest as I made my way through the dense trees. Elena had insisted on going after the vampire lord, a creature whose name was whispered in fear across every hunter's lips. It was our final mission, the one that would solidify us as legends. We were in his lair now, a desolate mansion, forgotten by time, hidden deep within the woods. The air inside was thick with dust, the scent of decay stinging my nostrils. The silence was suffocating, each creak of the floorboards making my heart skip a beat. Elena had been eerily quiet, too quiet. "Are you ready?" I asked her, trying to break the tension. My voice echoed through the dark halls. She didn't respond immediately, and I glanced over at her. Her eyes glinted in the low light. There was something wrong with them, a darkness that wasn't there before, but I dismissed it. She was just as ready as I was. She had to be. We made our way through the mansion, our footsteps slow and deliberate. Every door we passed, every shadow we turned into, felt like a trap. The house seemed alive, watching us, breathing with a life of its own. Then the air shifted. A coldness swept over me, deeper than the chill outside. I felt it in my bones, a creeping dread I couldn't shake. Elena had stopped in front of an old wooden door, her back to me. She was trembling, but not from fear, from something else. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She turned slowly, and in the dim light, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Her smile, it wasn't a smile of reassurance. It was twisted, empty, and in her eyes, I saw something hungry. "Elena, what's going on?" I stepped back, my pulse quickening. But before I could react, before I could even reach for my weapon, she turned to face the door. A low, guttural laugh escaped her lips. "I'm sorry, love," she murmured, barely audible over the wind that howled outside. "But this is where we part ways." I didn't understand at first. My brain couldn't process what she was saying, what she was doing. It was only when she opened the door, the final door, that I saw it. The vampire lord, his pale, lifeless face, his eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. And then the betrayal hit me, the horrible realization. Elena had been working with him all along. She wasn't my partner, she was his. "You were the perfect bait," the vampire lord's voice hissed, his words sharp like the blade of a knife. "And now you're mine." The world went black. I woke up in darkness, not just the absence of light, but a suffocating, oppressive blackness. My skin felt tight, wrong. My senses were heightened. I could hear every rustle of the wind outside, every drop of water hitting the ground, even the heartbeat in my chest, or what used to be my heartbeat. I gasped and stumbled to my feet, only to find the world spinning around me. My reflection in the cracked mirror beside me showed a face that wasn't mine, pale, gaunt, eyes glowing, an unnatural red. I wasn't human anymore. I was like them. I stumbled toward the window, my fingers trembling as I parted the curtains. The moonlight bathed everything in an eerie glow. The night seemed to hum with a life of its own. And somewhere in the distance I could hear her, Elena, laughing in the distance. Her voice echoed through the forest like a hollow wind, carrying with it a promise of pain. I wanted to scream, to shout, to rage at the betrayal, but my throat was dry and something else, something darker gnawed at the edges of my thoughts. The thirst, the hunger. I couldn't resist. The worst part? It's been weeks since that night, and I know now she's coming for you. You might think I'm just telling a story, that this is all make-believe, a tragic tale of love, betrayal, and monsters. But if you're reading this, it's too late. You've already been marked. You'll meet a vampire by the end of this week. Whether you want to or not, it's already too late. You've read my words, and now you're a part of the curse. The night is coming for you. The hunger, it calls to you. It's already begun. Tonight, when the moon rises high, step outside. Look at the shadows. Listen carefully. You'll hear a voice calling your name. It might sound familiar. It will be Elena's voice, tricking you. And by then, it will be too late. You've been warned. Don't look outside after midnight, or else you'll meet this fate. I retrieved my trail cam from the woods. I should delete the photos I captured. Predators are an uncommon sight where I like to go hunting near the Rocky Mountains. I wanted to see what exactly I'd be contending with during the hunting season, so I decided I would place some bait fairly deep in the woods. Whatever would take the bait would be photo captured on my trail cam. I drove to a heavily wooded stretch of a logging road and parked my truck on the side of the road. The fresh air was great to breathe in, and even from the road you could hear the chirps of birds and insects. This area was new to me, recommended by a family friend. He claimed I'd see lots of bears here. I kept the bait, a few pounds of meat slabs, sealed up in a bag while I trekked into the woods with the bait barrel. I hiked in about 15 minutes from the road and reached a small clearing that I was satisfied with. Scanned the ground for any flattened grass, animal tracks in the dirt, and any sort of droppings nearby. I found some tracks that looked like a wolf had gone through here fairly recently. No matter, my gun and pepper spray were with me as well. I set up the bait rather quickly and fastened my trail cam to a tree. The camera itself was well hidden thanks to how the branches hung on the tree. I would get a clear view of whatever went for the barrel. My expectations were to find a bear with this barrel of meaty bait, but I'd be satisfied in capturing photos of other animals like mountain lions, wolves, even a wolverine that could probably all smell the meat and come to investigate. My trail cam picked up something much worse. Just about a month later, I went back to retrieve the trail cam. After parking the truck, I had already begun finding some discrepancies from my hike here last time. There was an eerie silence that carried through the woods. No chirping, nothing. I could hear every step I took, almost louder than before. Some people find the complete silence to be tranquil, but I'm not one of them. I felt more alert this trek. That alertness made the path to the trail cam feel that much longer. The silence persisted as I finally saw my equipment in view. The barrel had tipped over and was scratched up. The stench of something like a carcass smacked me in the face. I got the gun ready, sure that I had to shoot something. No rustling in the bushes, so I proceeded carefully. The bait was still there. Of course, it had begun to spoil. That is where the foul smell was coming from. Oddly enough, there were spindly hairs that were stuck to the bait. I plucked one off the bait. It had to have been almost a meter long, fully unraveled. What kind of hair was this? Disappointed, and still a little bit on edge, I hastily grabbed my trail cam and left everything else behind. I could hear something trudging through the trees in the distance, so I kept the gun at the ready as I left. It was somewhat persistent as I could hear the sounds of grass being pressed down, shrubs rustled, and twigs and branches being stepped on for most of my way back. All the noises were far but persistent. I felt watched. I picked up my pace and eventually got to the truck. The minute I slammed the truck door, I heard a strange yell in the distance. My heart skipped several beats, and I started up the truck despite the feeling of my blood nearly freezing. I stepped on the gas and made my way back home. I had about an hour's drive back to my home, and my thoughts raced on the eerie feeling, the fact the bait wasn't taken, the strange hair, and that god-awful sound. Hopefully it'd all be solved with the photos on the trail cam. At record speed, I darted into my condo and got the trail cam's photos loaded onto my computer. There were lots of photos that were taken, so I started from the top. A part of me wishes that I didn't. The first batch of photos were primarily just photos of the bait. No animals or anything. Strong winds, swaying trees, things like that probably tripped the camera. These photos persisted for a few days. About a week or so in, there were photos of birds landing on the barrel and other small critters that I could see through the trees. There was even a nice buck in the area that walked through the clearing. It wasn't until the third week that I finally saw what I was looking for. A bear, big one too. Looked like it sniffed the barrel, but then the photos picked up something that confused me. The bear took off swiftly. I could see photos of the dirt and leaves being kicked up. There were a few incidents of this event. A bear would investigate the barrel, notice something out of the camera's range, then run off. I started to get an explanation from the photos about 2 days after the first, when I saw something I still am puzzled by. In one of the photos, wrapped around a tree, looked like a human hand that wasn't there before. I reviewed the cluster of photos taken at one of the later moments. The bear sniffs the barrel, and the thing's hand hits the tree, and the bear takes off. The bear didn't even stand its ground. A few days of photos were uneventful until 4 days before I picked up the trail cam. I was both confused and terrified by what I saw on the camera. From out of the clearing, I saw what I can only describe as a hairy, naked man crawling on all fours towards the barrel at 4 a.m. The hair on his head was almost the entire length of his body. The thing was emaciated and moved abnormally slowly, judging by the photos. I almost leapt from the computer chair upon looking at it. There's no explanation for something like that to be in the woods at that time. It reached the barrel and began scratching it up. The swipes it took at the barrel were cat-like and swift. I took notice that when this thing stood up, it was at least 7 feet tall. It knocked it over and began frantically pulling all the meat bait out of the barrel. It held it in its hands and threw it on the ground. It cocked its head towards the camera as I could see the shine in its eyes reflecting. This thing looked back at the meat and began rolling on top of the meat with its mangy body. It stood back up and unhinged its jaws to let out what I can describe as a scream. My mind paired that scream that I had heard upon leaving with these photos, and I nearly lost consciousness. I wanted to stop looking at the photos and turn it into the authorities, but what would they say anyways? I still had 40 photos to go. I took a few hyperventilating breaths and pushed onwards. It attacked the barrel some more, and its attention then shifted to the trail cam. I think it may have noticed it because it began to stumble towards after taking several irregular steps. It peered down towards the camera. I could see its warped face coming in from the top left angle of the photo. Its eyes were abnormally spaced apart, closer to that of a goat's, but not fully on the side of its head. Its long hair swayed in what I assume was either its abnormal movements or the wind. Eventually, after investigating the camera, it crouched back onto all fours and scurried into the trees directly away from the camera. There were a few photos remaining of mundane activities, much like before this horrific encounter. Nothing touched the bait, and it was pretty clear why. If I knew that thing was out there, I would never have gone to get my trail cam back. I'm certainly never going back there, ever. I want to delete these photos, but a part of me thinks it's worth putting a case together for the sheriff or something. It was a close call. Who knows what would have happened if I had gone 4 days earlier to grab the camera. I probably wouldn't be here and able to be writing this. If you find a set of stairs in the woods that lead nowhere, do not climb them. I exhaled sharply as I lowered the revolver from my temple. Today marks the 5th anniversary of Nadia's disappearance. Hard to believe it's been that long. We had so much time left, so much life to live together. But that all came to a screeching halt half a decade ago on the day we found those stairs. Without her, I have no purpose. I've got no family, no friends, no one to keep me tethered to this world. So every year on the night that Nadia went missing, I stumble out to the spot that had happened with my 6-shooter in hand, halfway drowned in a handle of vodka, and I let the forest decide if I'm going to live for another year, or if I'm going to be reunited with her, wherever she is. Now that it's determined that I have at least one more trip around the sun, I'll tell you how I ended up here at rock bottom. I need to get this out while I still have the guts to tell this story. Don't know why though. I'm going to wake up sometime tomorrow afternoon with a massive headache and no recollection of tonight's events. I'd better tell you while I still can. I've lived on the outskirts of Bear Creek National Park for my entire life. Don't bother looking it up. It's a fake name so nobody tries to seek out the evil that lurks here. It's safer that way. As I was saying, I used to live out here in a cabin with my dad. I miss him so freaking much. He passed away 8 years ago, leaving me all alone. Cancer is a bitch. That was before Nadia and I started dating. It's funny how things work out. I actually met her at a coffee shop on my way back from visiting Dad's grave. When she approached me and asked if the seat across from me was taken, I was instantly smitten. Her deep blue eyes shimmered like the ocean. Long brown hair cascaded down her shoulders in waves. And that smile. When Nadia smiled, it was as if time stopped just for a moment so that the whole world could soak in its breathtaking beauty. We were inseparable after that day. In a month we were dating. In 9 more, we were living together in my cabin. And in another year, we were set to get married. Had a date and a venue picked out and everything. I was on cloud 9, but that was all torn from me in an instant. God, I wish I never would have taken her out there. I had my first encounter with the stairs when I was 7. Dad had always warned me never to climb them. That wasn't a problem for me though. The stairs exuded a malevolent presence, like anyone who dared to walk up their steps would be eaten alive from fear alone. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was playing in the woods near the cabin when I saw it, a black, winding set of metal stairs that stretched maybe a story. They didn't lead anywhere, they just kind of ended. All the stairs are like that. They vary in size and shape and model, but the one thing they all have in common is that they don't lead anywhere, and they're never in the same place twice. They just sort of materialize. No one knows how or why, and truthfully, we don't want to know. Most of us, that is. Nadia wanted to know, and that knowledge cost her everything. Come on, baby, just a little further. I want to see the sunset. Nadia whined in protest at my proposal to head back. Nadia, I know you do. But we didn't bring flashlights and our phone batteries aren't worth a crap. I don't know about you, but I don't feel like smacking into trees every few feet on our way home. Oh, fine, you win. I'll go back this time. But promise me we can come back tomorrow, she requested, puffing out her lower lip and gazing up at me with her best puppy dog eyes. I'd be lying if I said they hadn't worked. All right, I'll take you back out here tomorrow, but only if you, I trailed off, entranced by the sight of them. Nadia's brows knitted together in confusion as she traced my gaze, then her jaw fell open. Directly before us stood a polished cedarwood staircase. I got a sinking feeling in my gut the moment I laid eyes on that thing. It looked so out of place, like a rat in a fish tank. What is that thing? Nadia muttered, gaze still fixed to it. It's nothing. I'll tell you later. I said, snatching her hand and leading her in the opposite direction. Ow, Jason, let go. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? Tell me what's going on or I'm not moving another inch, Nadia protested, crossing her arms defiantly. I sighed. There was no point in hiding it any longer. She was going to find out eventually. Okay, so this is going to sound completely unhinged, but please bear with me. Ever since I've lived here, ever since anyone's lived here, really, people have been finding random staircases in the forest. They appear and disappear all the time, and you'll never find one in the same place twice. The stairs are a bad omen. Something awful happens if you climb to the top, but no one quite knows what. All I know for certain is we need to stay far, far away from them. Nadia rolled her eyes in response. Come on, Jay, do you really expect me to believe that? A bad omen? Are you some kind of spiritual medium now? Ooh, a staircase, so scary, she said, waving her hands in a mocking gesture. Nadia, do I look like I'm joking? I know it sounds crazy, but I wouldn't lie to you. She softly took my hands into hers and met my gaze. Baby, you know I wouldn't accuse you of that. It's strange, but if it really irks you that much, I won't press it, okay? Thank you. Now let's go home. I'm starving. Once we were out of sight of that wretched thing, I could sense the tension starting to disperse. It was as if a veil had been lifted. I fell asleep that night with a stomach full of dumplings and not a thought in the world besides the petite girl snuggled in my arms. The stairs had vanished from my brain, just like they always did, until the next day. We both had the entire day off work, and before I knew it, Nadia was pulling me back down the same path as the day prior to watch the sunset. Butterflies danced in my stomach as we approached the spot that we'd seen the stairs the day before. Even so, Nadia noticed it first. Hey, isn't this the same place you pulled me away from yesterday? Those stairs, they're gone. See? I told you they're a bad omen. Now do you believe me? I never said I didn't. It's just a strange phenomena, you know? Like seeing a unicorn. You don't really ever expect to find it, or in this case, not find it. It's a lot to process. I didn't know what to say. Shed hit the nail on the head with her analysis, except the staircases were no unicorns. No, they were something far more sinister. We continued our walk in silence until we finally reached our destination. That evening will always stand out in my mind. The sky looked like a painter's canvas, a gorgeous amalgamation of purple and pink and orange melded together behind a smattering of light, wispy clouds. I'd never seen anything so picturesque. We stayed there well past the sunset, staring up into a sea of stars illuminating the night sky. Thank you for keeping your promise. Today was perfect. Nadia yawned, sleepily resting her head on my shoulder. Every day with you is perfect. Thank you for dragging me out of the house. This really has been incredible. I love you so much. You're welcome, bonehead. I love you too, Nadia giggled quietly, her eyes struggling to stay open. All right, sweetheart. I think it's time for us to go back. You can hardly stay awake. Just a little longer. You're so comfy, she protested, burying her face into my chest. My heart felt so full in that moment. What had I done to deserve such an amazing girl? All right, up we go, I said, hoisting my weary girlfriend into my arms. If your legs won't move, I have no choice but to carry you. Oh, no, how terrible. Whatever shall I do? She quipped, wrapping her arms around my neck. Nothing, just stay still and let me. I froze mid-stride. I swallowed a dry lump in my throat as sweat began to bead atop my brow. In the darkness among the foliage, my flashlight beam fell upon a large, bulky object. They were back. Jason, what's wrong? You look pale, Nadia said, following the ray of light until she realized what I was looking at. A wide set of weathered concrete steps ascended to nowhere. They called to me, begging me to climb them. Just one step, just one, that's all. Jason, I feel it now. What you were talking about yesterday, I feel it, is all wrong. They shouldn't be here, Nadia whimpered, fear jolting across her pupils. Yeah, you're right, I said, ripping my gaze from the awful thing. Just don't look at it, we're gonna be okay. This time I wasn't as relieved once we'd escaped the staircase's alluring pull. I'd never seen the stairs 2 days straight before. They were always more sporadic in their appearance, never showing up with any rhythm or consistency, so to see them twice made me a bit uneasy. Nadia and I didn't mention the stairs again that evening. We were both absolutely exhausted, and we were itching to get some much-needed rest. I'd be damned if I was going to let a stupid staircase ruin a good night's sleep. Nadia was already snoring when I joined her in bed, and I was out the second my head hit the pillow. If only we could have made it until morning. Maybe then she'd still be here. I awoke in a pitch-black room. Nadia was missing from her side of the bed. I didn't worry at first. It wasn't abnormal for her to sneak off to the bathroom in the middle of the night every once in a while. I didn't want to drift back off until I had her beside me, though. I waited and waited to no avail. Then, after what felt like an eternity, I finally called out. "Hey babe, are you coming back to bed soon?" I received no response. That was when the panic set in. Nadia would never ignore me like that. I leapt out of bed and beelined for the bathroom. It was empty. My heart began to pound against my ribcage like a jackhammer. Sirens were blaring in my head, telling me that something was wrong, and I felt helpless to silence them. I turned the whole cabin inside out with no results. Nadia was nowhere to be found. Then, amongst all the chaos, an idea flickered in my head. Why hadn't I thought of it sooner? Nadia's phone was missing from the bedside table, but I could track her location on Find My Friends. I fumbled to unlock my own phone and open the app. I loaded up the app and located Nadia's icon. She was close. The app said that she was only a few hundred feet from the cabin. I threw on a pair of shorts and darted out into the frigid night air. I raced, barefoot, across leaves and rocks and acorns. I didn't have time to grab shoes. Right then, I didn't care if my feet were torn to ribbons, as long as Nadia was okay. I eventually reached the point where her phone should have been. I frantically called it, praying that she would pick up this time. I saw something illuminate amongst the leaves, and not far beyond it, I found who I was searching for. But instead of being overcome with joy upon finding the love of my life, my blood turned to ice. Nadia's face was partially illuminated by the moonlight trickling through the canopy. She was gazing down at me with tears streaming down her cheeks. Below her feet sat a staircase. This time, it was ornate. White glassy marble stairs gleamed even in the darkness, topped off with a pristine red carpet. The stairs looked as if they would lead straight to heaven itself, and that terrified me. Dread crashed over me like a tidal wave as we stared at each other. I wanted to move. I wanted to sprint up to her and sweep her off those godforsaken things, but I couldn't. I was rooted in place, forced to watch as the girl of my dreams ascended the final step. "Jason, please. I don't want to go. I love you and I want to stay with you forever." I had to know. I could feel them calling to me. "Please don't let them take me." Nadia sobbed uncontrollably, reaching out a hand toward me. I wanted to grab it, to pull her into my arms, to tell her that everything was going to be okay. But I was stuck. I was forced to watch in abject horror as Nadia involuntarily took that one last step to the top. It felt as if time had slowed to a crawl. 1 second I was paralyzed, eyes locked on Nadia and those vile stairs, and the next, I was all alone. Nadia and the staircase had vanished, wisped into the cool night air like they'd never existed at all. The burden of that night will stay with me until the day I die. I wailed, I screamed, I pounded the earth until my fists were bloody and my throat was hoarse. Nadia had been taken from me right before my very eyes, and I did absolutely nothing. I blamed myself for a long time after that. Hell, I still do. I don't think I'll ever be able to move on. That's my punishment, I suppose. Living out a dull, meaningless life while images of my lost girlfriend run through my head day in and day out. It's why I drink. Strangely enough, I've never seen the stairs again. They're really the only reason that I'm still here. Because maybe if I just give in, maybe if I convince myself to climb that one last looming step, then there might be a chance that I'll be reunited with Nadia. And for me, that's a chance that I have to take. My dad sent me a weird text message from the woods. I can wait to go back. First off, I'm a city kid. I don't know anything about land navigation or wilderness survival, and prior to that terrible day, the biggest forest I'd ever walked through was the park downtown. Things would have stayed that way too if it wasn't for the weird text I'd gotten from my father right before I left work. "I am lost. Come find me." In the woods. It read in all caps. It was odd. My father was a university professor, and his texts were usually eye-rollingly long and grammatically perfect, but the message had come with a location pin, a single red dot surrounded by green. Zooming out, I saw that my father was in the middle of something called the Elijah Corvin Woods, a massive, privately run nature preserve a few hours outside of the city. There weren't any trails close to my father's location, and the nearest road seemed to be a long walk away. I wrote him back with a single question mark, but the message was left unread. I called twice, but he didn't pick up. I was irritated, but more than that, I was worried. My father, Dr. Ralph Stearns, had always been pretty intense about his interests, but lately it had been one obsession after another. Ever since my mom had left him a few months earlier, he'd been going down some strange rabbit holes, hoping for a way to radically change his life. I had no idea what he could have been doing out there. Hiking? A meditation retreat? Maybe even something more dangerous, like searching for psychedelic mushrooms. With a groan, I put the coordinates he'd sent into my Maps app and stomped out into the slush-covered office parking lot. In my blue polo shirt, khaki pants and sneakers, I wasn't exactly prepared for a winter hike. My puffer jacket didn't do much to keep away the cold, and I had to blow on my hands to keep them warm while I started my car. The check engine light was on, again, but there wasn't time to do anything about that either. Like usual, it was nothing, probably. I tried to ignore it and keep my mind on what I needed to do. Find my father, fix whatever he'd gotten himself into, and have a long talk with the old man about the dangers of getting too deep into your obsessions. At each stoplight, I pulled out my phone to look up information about the Elijah Corvin Woods. There wasn't much to be found. The website of the private foundation that managed it looked like something out of the early 90s. It featured bright tie-dye colors, the name of the preserve, and a blurry photo of some trees. There were a few blog posts written by people who had visited, but they all felt a little unhinged. The post began normally, describing the route the author took, what the forest looked like, or the motives for their journey. Most of the bloggers seemed to be into New Age stuff or alternative spirituality, and they were visiting the Elijah Corvin Woods to connect with nature or receive healing energy. I had nothing against any of that, but the more I read, the more sinister those posts began to seem. The pattern was always the same. First, the sentences started to become incoherent. Next, the words spaced themselves out strangely, appearing in all caps like some bizarre, creepy poem. Deep roots. Hunger. For home. Read one. The branches. Stretched and broken. No eyes in the forest. Read another. A grotesque image of a person's toes transforming into bloody roots and digging themselves into the ground flashed through my mind, and I realized why the posts were bothering me so much. They were just like my father's text message. Equally unsettling was the fact that none of the blogs had been updated. The entry about the Elijah Corvin Woods was always the last post. Looking back, there were other details I should have noticed. Details that seemed minor at the time, but that would later take on a great and terrible importance. The most telling was that none of the authors of the 3 or 4 blogs I read seemed able to give the exact size of the nature preserve that they were visiting. Some claimed it was just a small park, while other authors made it sound like they had been backpacking there for days. Pushing the uncomfortable possibilities out of my mind, I took my eyes off of my phone and focused on getting to the preserve in one piece. I didn't see many cars on the road that led to the Elijah Corvin Woods, and why would I? There was nothing out there but low gray hills covered with endless forest. I saw no billboards, no rest areas, not even any wildlife. There was something ominous about those trees though, the way they seemed to be watching me from the crumbling edges of the snow-covered 2-lane road. I didn't like to think that my father might be lost somewhere out among them. The owners of the Elijah Corvin Woods, whoever they were, didn't exactly go out of their way to publicize the place. The park's bare-bones brown sign didn't list any contact information or visiting hours, and I found myself wondering exactly how my father had gotten access to it. There was no fence or wall around the preserve. It was much too large for that, but there was a barred gate at the end of the access road. It was wide open, with a single pair of tire tracks leading onward through the unplowed snow. The forest hovered over me, and my already small hatchback car felt tiny in its shadow. I drove with gritted teeth, cringing every time my tires lost traction on the steep private drive. There was something hypnotic about the winding curves, the groaning of the wind in the bare branches, and the rumble of my 4-cylinder engine as it struggled through the snow. If it hadn't been for the thing that ran out into the road, I might have driven past my father's car altogether. It was dark and ragged, moving so fast that it almost seemed to be flying. I slammed on the brakes and my stomach lurched as my car slid forward sideways. It came to halt with the tires still spinning, just inches away from going off of the road entirely. With my heart thundering in my chest, I looked around for any trace of whatever it had been, but there was nothing, not even tracks in the snow. As I scanned the trees, however, I caught sight of something else in a pull-off up ahead, a low dark green shape coated with a thin layer of powdery snow. It was my father's new sports car. I carefully parked beside it, switched off my engine, and stepped out into the freezing air. The woods were dead silent. I didn't like the quiet. It made me feel like something was standing right behind me, waiting for its chance to strike. The feeling was so intense, so overwhelming, that I couldn't bring myself to turn around and check. I was sure that if I did, I would see it. Some hollow-eyed, long-fingered thing, drool dribbling from its pin-like teeth. Then the sensation passed, and I was alone in the forest again. Maybe it was just the remoteness of the place, or the strangeness of my situation, but something about the Elijah Corvin woods had gotten to me. I took out my phone to see if I had service, only to find that the battery had gone dead, even though I would have sworn it was almost fully charged when I had left the office. My father's sports car was another trophy of the divorce. I didn't like to think about how much he'd paid for it, but at least it appeared to be intact. Footprints led away from its door and into the woods. I knew that without my phone, I'd have no way to call for help if I got lost, so I made a promise to myself. If I hadn't found any trace of my father after 10 minutes, I'd leave the preserve and let the authorities handle it. I would stick to the trail and keep the road in sight at all times. There wasn't much of a trail. If it hadn't been for the footprints, I wouldn't have had any idea where the path lay. Something was off about my father's tracks too. At times they'd bunched together, stretched out, or even disappeared completely. At first I wondered if they had been affected by the snow, but then I remembered that the last snowfall had been over 2 days ago. A chilling thought struck me. If that was the case, then why was my father's car snow-covered as well? Just how long had he been out here? I felt a sudden burning need to look back, to confirm that my memory was correct. When I did, I saw nothing but more forest. It shouldn't have been possible. I had only been walking for a few minutes. The road had been right behind me the whole time, clearly visible through the branches, until it wasn't. Now, no matter which way I looked, I saw the same thing. Tall black trees, gray skies, and a sea of unblemished white snow. My father's footprints too had disappeared. A sense of vertigo washed over me. Without the footprints to guide me, I had no way of knowing which way I had come from or which way I was going. The road might have been just a 5-minute walk away, but I might become lost for days if I went in the wrong direction. I forced myself to take control of my breathing and think. The sun had been on my left when I was heading into the forest, so if I kept it on my right while I walked back, I would surely find my way back to the road eventually, right? Half an hour later, however, I had only succeeded in going deeper into the Elijah Corvin woods. Those ancient trees looked even more sinister in the gloomy light of the setting sun, and I shivered in my cheap puffer jacket. It had been just fine when waiting to get into a club on a chilly night downtown, but out here, in the true dead of winter, it was almost useless. A burst of color flashed on the edge of my vision. Something red hung from a dead stump just a few feet ahead. With a sinking feeling in my stomach, I approached it, my father's winter coat. I would have recognized that faded, stained old thing anywhere. I had teased him so many times about it, trying to convince him to get a new one. But it was below freezing out here. Why would he have taken off his coat? The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something peering at me from behind a tree about 10 feet away. I thought I caught a glimpse of wide, insane eyes and a grinning mouth full of teeth, but by the time I turned around completely, whatever it was had gone. Had I just imagined it? I shook my head and told myself to keep moving. I wanted to call out to my father, but it seemed like a bad idea to break the silence. A dangerous idea. Richard. The voice that had spoken my name was so close that I could feel its rotten breath on my cheek. I cried out and swung instinctively, but my fist passed through empty air. So far I had been able to blame my unsettling experience on being a nervous city kid with an overly active imagination. No more. There was something very, very wrong in the Elijah Corvin woods. I started to run. I knew it was a bad idea to move too quickly while lost in the wilderness, but I had to get away from that ragged coat and that awful whispering voice. The sky overhead grew darker. I kept snagging my clothes on branches and stumbling over roots. I had the strangest sensation that the forest was grabbing for me, trying to root me into place until I was as dead and hollow as the stump where I'd found my father's jacket. I tried to push that disturbing thought out of my mind, but there was no denying it. The trees were so close together that I thought I heard the sap flowing beneath their bark. The cold air was thick with the reek of dead leaves and rot. Just when I thought I couldn't take it for another minute, a clearing opened ahead of me beneath the wide open sky, almost like it was meant for me. I gave a shout and ran out into a field of barren snow. If I hadn't tripped over the hiking boot, I never would have known it was there. Like the jacket, it had been my father's. Its twin lay just a few feet ahead. The thought of my old man out here somewhere, barefoot, uncovered and alone, sent a shiver up my spine. I was halfway across the clearing before I realized that it wasn't a field at all. I was in the middle of a small frozen pond. The ice groaned beneath my feet as I walked, and I already knew what would happen if it gave way. A sudden plunge into black, freezing water. Fingers slipping helplessly on the ice as I sank. And maybe, just maybe, cold fingers that would reach up to pull me under. The rest of my father's clothes lay strewn in a path that pointed like an arrow to the far side of the pond. Was it a sign? And if so, who had left it? With nothing better to go on, I followed the trail of crumpled clothes. I paused every time I heard a crack beneath my feet, and when I did, I would have sworn I heard something scraping and thumping against the ice beneath me. A figure took shape in the darkness ahead. At first I thought it was a bent, twisted dead tree, but I had never seen a tree that was so warped-looking and pale. Its twin branches looked almost like arms, the twigs like long, horribly stretched fingers, and was the stuff covering it bark or skin? Before I could stop myself, I reached out to touch it. An eye opened in its weird, bark-like flesh. A greenish-blue iris looked my way, and I realized that I recognized it. I was looking at my father's eye. With a sound like splintering wood, the abomination in front of me attempted to speak. A warning, or maybe a scream. The shock of it made me fall backwards. Ice cracked beneath my weight. The noise made whatever was beneath the ice start clawing even more rapidly. And that wasn't all, there was movement in the woods. "Re-see Richard." Now, dozens of voices were calling my name, and the frozen pond was truly beginning to shatter. Frigid water washed over my fingers as I scrambled back onto dry land and ran. Black, ragged silhouettes pursued me through the trees, goading me on, their long stick-like fingers always just barely grazing my skin. They weren't trying to kill me. I realized just run me until I was too exhausted to move. Maybe then my toes would begin to dig into the hard, snowy ground. Maybe then my spine would snap and bend as my arms reached skyward, my fingers splitting into twigs. Maybe then I would finally be as much a part of the Elijah Corvin woods as they were, as my father was. Briars scraped against my face and winter air burned my lungs, but I couldn't let myself stop. No matter what, I could not stop. I was close to passing out when I noticed something had changed. The ground beneath my feet was flat and even, and wherever I was, it was out in the open. The whispers had fallen behind, but I knew they were there, keeping pace with me at the edge of the forest, waiting. I thought I knew what had stopped them. A pair of lights, like glowing white eyes, were barreling toward me, moving impossibly fast. Behind those twin lights came a monstrous shape, ready to crush me in its jaws. It was too much. There was no way I could escape this. I covered my eyes and hurled myself into a snowbank. Just seconds before the semi-truck blasted by. The road. By sheer luck, I had made it back to the road. The first two cars that passed didn't stop for me, and I couldn't blame them. There I was, ghost pale and covered with bleeding wounds, standing at the edge of a dark forest. It was another trucker who finally braked for me, and when I climbed up into his cab, he told me it was only because I looked like I was about to die of hypothermia, and he didn't want that on his conscience. The locals, he said, had warned him to ignore any strange things he saw on the stretch of road that passed by the Elijah Corvin woods. As it turned out, the trucker wasn't far from wrong. If he hadn't picked me up, there's no way I would have survived another hour. I had a bad case of frostbite, coupled with shock and exhaustion. I was in the hospital for weeks. I later learned that the night shift nurses hated being assigned to me because I screamed in my sleep. Apparently, I would claw at the bed and shriek about how I needed to sink my roots into the ground. But don't remember any of that. All I remember are the trees, foreboding and hungry, their limbs rising over my head like a twisted crown. I know that I shouldn't want to return to that awful place, but I felt its pull ever since I've left the hospital. The dreams keep getting more intense, and I know that one day soon it won't be a dream. It'll wake up and I'll really be back there, surrounded by a circle of ragged figures while I dig my bare feet into the sweet, nourishing earth of the Elijah Corvin woods. I was invited to play the games in the woods, and what I saw out there will haunt me forever. When I was very young, my grandfather used to always tell me to stay out of the woods behind our house. Legend has it that there's something terrible in there, he'd say, pointing to the trees behind our home with his only arm, the other of which he told me he had lost in the war, and no one who goes in ever comes back the same. But I never took his warnings very seriously, given his age and hard life, writing them off as the ramblings of a senile and bitter old man. At least until a few years later, when, at the age of 10, I was told by my mother that my grandfather had passed and had left me a parting gift. It was a crumpled envelope with the word Bobby scribbled onto the back, sealed with more tape than an envelope needed sealing. Inside was a folded piece of paper, which, upon unfolding, I noticed my grandfather had sketched the layout of what looked like 3 games. Beside the first 2 games, he had written instructions for what looked like how to beat them. Don't go in the box. Don't run. Beside the third were a couple more notes. Don't lift it alone. This is as far as I made it, before I lost my arm. And at the very bottom of the page, Grandpa had addressed me directly. Bobby, if you receive an invitation to play the games in the woods, do not accept it. Run as far away as you can. But in the event you end up there anyway, may these instructions help you finish what I started. Games in the woods? I thought to myself. After all the warnings and all the lectures, Grandpa was trying to protect me from games? I found the whole thing quite silly and resolved to put it out of my mind. And so that's exactly what I did, bearing away both the loss of my grandfather and the gift that he had left for me for 4 long years. That is until, at the age of 14, when I was a freshman in high school, I received a scroll on my doorstep tied together with a thorny vine. After carefully unraveling it, I discovered an invite to the very games that my grandfather had warned me about, grotesquely handwritten in ink. Bobby, join us in the forest behind your house tonight to compete in the games in the woods. Don't be late. The games will begin promptly at midnight. I laughed out loud and immediately tore up the scroll on the spot. But who could be the one pranking me? I wondered. Surely my mom wasn't in on it. Who could have known about the invitation that my grandfather referenced? Maybe my Uncle Frank. He's always been a jokester. Yes, it must be Uncle Frank. And on that note, I went about my day and completely forgot about the scroll. That is, until later that night, when, while fast asleep, I suddenly felt myself torn from my bed, stuffed into what felt like a canvas satchel, and dragged out my window, and from the sound of it, what must have been through the woods behind my house. The whole time I tried my best to kick and scream. This isn't funny, Uncle Frank. I know what you're up to. But Uncle Frank, or so I thought, was much too strong to break free from, and the next thing I knew, I found myself dropped into the middle of the forest and my satchel ripped away. Uncle Frank? I called out, unable to see my surroundings in the dark. Until my eyes adjusted and I looked up to find a hooded figure, wearing a tattered brown cloak and holding a burning torch that illuminated everything around him, save for what lay under his shadowy hood. What the heck? I thought to myself. That's not Uncle Frank. The shrouded man said no words, and simply pointed to a footbridge, lit by torchlight, not far away, and gestured for me to cross it. Realizing now that this wasn't Uncle Frank's doing, and in turn that the letter and my grandfather's warning must both be real, I began shaking in fear and, not knowing what else to do, obeyed the hooded figure's order. When I got to the other side, I found myself surrounded by what must have been 20 of the hooded man's kin, all holding torches and encircling a glen in the forest, where the moon and the stars could now be seen in the night sky. And in the center of the glen were 4 poor souls, kids like me who must have also received the invitation or been dragged here against their will, or both. Kids from my high school that I recognized. There was Brad Ashworth, our class valedictorian, in a sweater vest, khakis, and boots, clearly prepared for the occasion. E. Holland Sullivan, whom many kids called a nerd, geek, dweeb, and weirdo, but whom I found to be perfectly normal, wearing a pair of overalls and round, wire-frame glasses. Del Colin Richardson in a running suit, a jock, known for excelling at least 3 sports: football, track, and basketball. And none other than Milton Dugan, the biggest bully in school, best known for using his sheer size to jam freshmen into lockers, wearing a pair of polka dot pajamas. "Shut up, loser," he called out to me, noticing the smile on my face when I saw what he was wearing. "What do you think they are?" Colin asked me, pointing to the hooded figures. "I have no idea, but I don't think they're friendly," I replied. Until Caitlin chimed in, "They're druids, idiots." "Whatever they are, I'm not scared of them," Brad added. That's when it hit me. Who would bring 5 high school students out into the middle of the woods to teach them a lesson? Well, teachers, of course. That must be it. Teachers. Yes, it's teachers under those hoods. But before I could continue to dwell on my epiphany, we were all suddenly interrupted by the sound of a loud howl emanating from the forest. And then, an old man with a white beard came hobbling out of the woods, walking stick in one hand and an object that I couldn't identify in his other. It was only when he reached the center of the glen, and stopped just a few feet away from us, that I noticed he was missing something. The reflection of light in his eyes, and upon further observation, it became apparent that he had no eyes at all. "What the?" I thought to myself before gasping, as the old man began to speak. "Invited ones, you stand before me tonight, under the light of the moon, with a great challenge before you, a challenge that only comes around every 75 years. Each of you were handpicked to play these games tonight, for each of you represent a unique virtue. 5 virtues put to the same test, to see which will overcome all others. The winner will be awarded the greatest prize of all, while the losers will pay a heavy price." The other 4 kids and I turned to each other with looks of confusion, then turned back to the old man, who continued, "But before we begin, which of you knows for a fact that you are the best player among us? Which of you is so brave, so courageous, so sure of your abilities, that you'll volunteer to step into the box?" he asked, pointing to an area of the glen that had been covered in darkness, but until the druids lit it with torchlight. It was a wooden box, about the size of a telephone booth, completely enclosed with what appeared to be a door on one side and a metal latch to open it. The box, I thought to myself, remembering my grandfather's letter, outlining 3 games, and assuming the first of which was this one. "Don't go in the box." "Easy enough," I mused, looking over at the other kids, waiting for one of them to heed the call instead, until, "It's me. I'm the smartest, and the most talented one here. I'll do it," Brad called out, raising his hand, before turning back to us. "Cowards." "Very well," the old man replied, walking over to the box, opening the door and gesturing for him to enter. And so he did. "Oh no," I thought to myself, as all of us kids cringed in anticipation of something unspeakable happening inside. But after a minute, the old man simply walked back over to the door, opened it, and let Brad out. He came proudly walking out of it, chest in the air, with a smug smile on his face, and belted out the words, "See, nothing to fear, fraidy cats." Despite his obnoxious comment, we all let out a sigh of relief, until suddenly a few of the druids grabbed Brad by the arms and pinned him to the box. "What's going on? What are you doing?" our valedictorian cried out, unsure of what exactly was happening. The hooded men proceeded to pry open his jaws with their hands, as the old man hobbled over to him, revealing the object in his hand, a sharp silver sword. But before any of us could react, the old druid had already reached into Brad's mouth, cut off his tongue, and held it up for all to see. Brad began crying and wailing, blood spraying from his mouth, as the druids let him go and he fell to the ground, arms flailing in pain. Meanwhile, the rest of us kids just stood there, wide-eyed in fear, unable to comprehend what we had just seen. "That was game 1, the old man called out to us. "Let it be a lesson that your greatest strengths can also be your greatest weaknesses. In this case, confidence begets arrogance. Now, take him away." Upon his command, 2 druids ran over to Brad, who was now passed out, picked him up, and carried him away into the woods. "Let's move on to game 2, shall we?" the eyeless old man continued, leading us, and the other druids, out of the glen, into the forest, down a torchlit path, and to a massive field, illuminated by the moonlight. He then took his staff, stuck it into the ground, and carved a long line in the dirt. "Will the remaining players please stand behind the line?" Still in shock from what had just happened, we all obeyed his command, lining up before the line in the dirt, which separated us from the football field-sized lawn. "Are you gonna hurt one of us again?" Milton called out, puffing out his chest. "'Cause I'm not afraid of you guys, and I am fully capable of defending myself." The old man ignored his rant and continued on with his own. "The rules of the second game are simple. When I say go, you're to run with the wolves." "Wolves," Caitlin whispered to me, trying to understand he meant. Just then, a group of druids emerged from the forest, leading 4 ravenous wolves on leashes to the field behind us, each of them drooling at the mouth while howling and growling at us maniacally. Caitlin and I shared a brief look of horror before the eyeless man stepped aside and called out, "Go." Colin was the first one to sprint off into the field, followed by Caitlin, and then what would have been me, but when I began to dart away, something jutted out in front of my legs and tripped me to the ground. Confused by what had happened, I looked up from the dirt to see Milton hopping over me. "Sucker!" as I realized that it must have been he who had tripped me, and saw the druids unleash the 4 wolves. I hopped up to my feet and attempted to run again, but before they hit the ground, the wolves had already caught up to me. In that moment, I closed my eyes and braced for the worst. But when I opened them again, I saw that they had run right past me, seemingly in pursuit of the others up ahead. But as I continued to watch the wolves run away, I noticed that they soon passed Milton too, and then Caitlin, finally making their way to Colin, who was running so fast that he disappeared into whatever lay beyond the field. And then the feral dog stopped running just before the end of the field and began howling and growling again, and they looked down at something below them. Eventually catching up with the others and making my way to the end of the field, Caitlin, Milton, and myself finally saw what had happened to Colin. There, at the end of the field, was a great pit, and at the bottom was the star athlete himself, writhing in pain and begging for our help. "Help me," Colin called out, clenching his legs, which must have broken from the fall. "Does anyone have a rope or anything we can lower down to him?" Caitlin asked. But the druids had just arrived, and were already lowering one down to Colin. And by the time they pulled him up, still screaming out in pain, the old eyeless druid had arrived, ready to greet him. "Why would you put a pit at the end of the race?" Colin screamed, as he lay helpless on the ground. "You said to run from the wolves." "I said to run with the wolves, not from them. They mean no harm. Just look at your friends here. But you got ahead of yourself. And for that there is a price," the old man warned. "Price? I already broke my legs," Colin replied. "Well, now we take them," the eyeless man said ominously before the druids surrounded Colin and held him down, as another approached him holding a giant scythe, its blade glimmering in the moonlight. "Wait, no," he cried out. But it was too late. In an instant, one of his legs was gone, severed from his body by the swinging scythe, as blood sprayed everywhere, and Colin screamed in agony. A second later, I saw Caitlin remove her glasses and wipe the blood from them, before putting them back on and continuing to watch on silently in horror. "What is wrong with you guys?" Milton called out, clenching his fists and pacing around in a threatening fashion. For a moment, I thought about cursing out Milton for tripping me, but then I realized he had actually saved me. And that's when I remembered my grandfather's second clue. "Don't run." He was right again. "Take him away," the old man said for a second time as a group of druids walked over and proceeded to carry Colin off into the woods before turning to Milton, Caitlin, and myself. "And now for game 3. He then led us back into the forest and down a rocky path that hugged a winding stream. At the end of the path, we came to a clearing between the trees where we saw 2 giant boulders, each nearly the size of a person, placed side by side on the ground. For this game, you have an option. Lift a boulder yourself, or pick a teammate to help you lift it. The person or team who holds it the longest wins, and the one who's first to drop it loses. Understand?" Milton, Caitlin, and I all looked at each other for a moment as we weighed the options. But suddenly I remembered my grandfather's third instruction. "Don't lift it alone." And before Milton could utter a word, I ran over to Caitlin. "Caitlin and I will be a team," I declared, as she smiled and put her arm around my shoulder. "But what about me?" Milton asked, offended by being the odd man out, before correcting himself. "Actually, you know what? Fine. I'm stronger than both of you combined anyway. This will be your own undoing, dorks. I'll compete by myself." "Very well," the old man called out, as he stood between the 2 stones. "When I say go, lift the boulders up off the ground for as long as you can." Caitlin and I crouched down and gripped the boulder from below, then looked at each other. "We got this," I assured her with a smile. "We got this," she replied, smiling back. Meanwhile, Milton was scrambling to grasp onto his boulder and began begging for more time. "Just a second, I swear. This boulder's heavier on one side and it's just..." But before he could continue, the old man raised his staff and called out, "Go," at the top of his lungs. Caitlin and I carefully and calmly lifted our boulder, and despite its heavy weight, strained ourselves to keep it elevated above the ground. But Milton was not as lucky. From the very beginning, he was doomed, as he still hadn't secured his grip on the rock when the old man yelled "go," and bumbled when he lifted it up, catching it in hands, but in a position that looked much too uncomfortable for him to sustain. And as the stone slowly began to slip out of his arms, Milton looked over at Caitlin and I with a sour face and mumbled, "You screwed me, losers." "Maybe if you weren't such a dick, Milton, someone might have chosen you," I replied, in an attempt to drive home the reason why he had lost. Milton tried to think of a clever retort. "You know what, Bobby?" But before he could finish his sentence, it was too late. The stone had fallen to the ground. He stopped what he was saying and looked down at it, a look of fear washing over his face. And as the druids began to surround him, rather than threaten them like he had in the past, Milton began to cry, "Please don't hurt me. Please, I'll do anything." But it was too late. The druids dragged Milton to the stump of a tree and laid his arm down upon it as another swung an axe high above his head and brought it slicing down through Milton's arm, leaving him with a stump of his own. As he saw the blood pouring out of his appendage, Milton began to scream until his eyes rolled into the back of his head and he eventually passed out. And for a third time, the eyeless old man called out, "Take him away." Now, only Caitlin and I remained. Together we stood there in silence, arms around each other as Milton's limp body was carried off into the woods. Which brings us to game 4, the old druid began. Perhaps the simplest of all, for this game is decided by you and you alone. When I say go, you'll have 1 minute to come to a decision on who will be the winner and who will be the loser. Caitlin replied, "Wait." But before she could continue, the old man interrupted her, commencing the final game. Go. Caitlin and I huddled together in the woods, as the old man and the druids encircled us, waiting for us to come to a consensus. "Wait, what do we do?" Caitlin whispered. "I don't know," I whispered back. "Should we choose both of us as the winners?" "No would be breaking the rules. He specified a winner and a loser. They'll punish us both. We need to choose one. But that means one of us will suffer the same fate as the others. I don't know if we have any other choice." "Then how should we decide?" "I don't know." "Wait," Caitlin said, as she reached into the pocket of her overalls and removed a coin. "If you're okay with it, a coin toss would be fair, totally up to chance." "It would be fair. Let's do it. But quick," I replied, knowing our minute would soon end. "Then you choose. Heads or tails," she offered up. "Okay. Heads," I replied quickly. And like that, Caitlin held out her fist, dropped the coin, towards the forest floor below, time suddenly slowing as it descended towards the ground, spinning and spinning and spinning, until, thud, we both crouched down and saw the result that would seal our fate forever. Heads. I had won. Caitlin looked up at me, her eyes wide and her mouth agape, as tears began to roll down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "It's okay," she whispered back. And then, the old man spoke. "Your time is up. What is your decision? Who is the winner, and who is the loser?" Both Caitlin and my heads hung low as she began to speak. "I'm the me." "Winner," I interrupted, as she looked at me, completely surprised by what I had said. "She's the winner, and I'm the loser." "But Bobby," she whispered. "Save yourself. Don't worry about me," I insisted, whispering back to her as the old man approached us. "Very well," he said, holding his wrinkled hand out to Caitlin, who accepted it in hers. And so he escorted her away, off into the woods, hobbling on his wooden staff until they disappeared into the night. And as for me, well, I was left there in the dark, surrounded by a dozen druids who slowly closed in on me. I didn't know what to do, so I, accepting my fate, simply closed my eyes and braced for the worst. But similar to what had come of the impending doom of the howling wolves, nothing happened. I opened my eyes to find one of the druids standing before me. "Congratulations," he said in an ominous voice, "on winning the games." "What?" I asked, confused how that could be possible. "I don't understand. I voted for Caitlin to be the winner." "Yes, you did," he replied. "But humility is the virtue that always wins the games. Your selfless act, sacrificing your own life for that of another's, is why you won." "And what do I win?" I asked, not knowing what else to say. "Just as the keeper of the games had stated, the greatest prize of all," he said, "life." "And what about Caitlin? What will become of her?" "That is still yet to be decided, but you will find out soon enough." Any sort of relief that I had felt immediately disappeared, and my heart sank as I realized that by volunteering my own life to save Caitlin's, I may have actually cost her hers. "Wait," I called out. "Let me take her place, please." But before I could continue, I felt the druids shove a giant canvas satchel over me, just as they'd done earlier that night before whisking me away into the forest. They must have knocked me out after that, because when I came to, I found myself back in my bedroom lying face first on the cold wooden floor. The next day at school, I raced to Caitlin's locker and then her homeroom, desperately hoping to see her face, hoping to put my mind at ease. But she never showed up, that day or ever again. And as for Brad, Colin and Milton, their claims about how they lost their respective body parts, despite being substantiated by me, were all written off by police, parents, and teachers alike as foolish accidents, when no such games were ever found in the woods. Years later, as my wife and I discuss having a child, I find myself wondering if I'll ever have a grandchild of my own. If they too will be invited to play the games in the woods, the next time the Druids come around, and if Caitlin will be one of them. That's it for tonight's stories, but the nightmares never end. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new upload. Got a scary experience of your own? Share it in the comments. I just might feature it in a future video. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember some things are scarier than they seem in the dark.